You know who Danny Hester is, though, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
He's
Yeah.
been training at Gold's
He's
back.
been around forever, and he's still shredded. He's still in really good shape.
He's always he trains Mickey Rourke.
Mm. It's amazing how like that Gold's Gym Venice like feels to me like it's forever frozen in time.
What do you mean?
Nothing changes there. Like people are like stuck there.
I was just having this who did I talk about? One of the guys. I was just talking about how people look the same was it the girls I was talking to? I think the girls, I said people look the same, 30 years later when I go back home, and they've trained longer than me and probably been in the gym more than me in 30 years, and they still look the same.
Did you used to train at Gold's Gym Venice regularly?
I did actually. The first time, it's kind of a funny story because, like, when you're in Massachusetts, all you hear about is the Mecca of bodybuilding, right? And I was one of those people that didn't realize that it's not the original Gold's Gym where Arnold trained. Like,
Right.
that's someone's house now. Like, you knock on the door, and these old people come to the door, and
Yeah.
it still says Gold's Gym on the front of
Right.
their house. I never understood why someone's house, they want to still have Gold's Gym on the front of their house. But so I was able to travel out to Gold's Gym Venice when I was I just had won the teen nationals at 19, and Chris Aceto was training Paul DeMeo. Remember Paul DeMeo?
Yeah, the huge legs.
Yeah, for the Mr. USA, and that's the year Cormier actually won his pro card. And
Quadzilla.
yeah,
Right? That's his
Quadzilla.
name? Paul DeMeo?
Yeah,
Quadzilla.
he was favored to win. Craig Titus was in that show. Mike Francois was in that show. Dennis Newman when he was on the upcoming. And he called me and he says, "Hey, Jay, I have an opportunity for you." And there was a misprint in the Boston Globe, which is a big newspaper in Massachusetts, and they had round-trip airline tickets on American for $99.
Oh, shit.
So for me, being broke, just coming off the teen nationals, I was like, man, I'm going to take advantage. So I literally called all night long. And just before midnight, I actually got a hold of someone, and they said, "Oh, sorry, it's a misprint." I said, "Well, you have to honor it, right?" And they said, "Yeah, we do." So I was able to fly round-trip tickets to California, and I was able to go out and watch that show. And I remember, we stayed quite a distance from Gold's, and my girlfriend at the time and I walked to the gym, and I remember going there and being like, "Oh my goodness, I'm in Gold's Venice," and that was
year?
like
What year are we
historic.
talking about?
93.
So Paul Dillette around at that year?
Yeah,
Or is it
he was there, but Flex Wheeler was there. Obviously, Cormier won the show. I saw him posing in the gym. I saw Keanu Reeves in there. Tommy Lee Jones was there when I was there. But we stayed in that gym for like 6 hours. We're like one of those like tourist people that just sat and watched and who's going to come. And like that was like I only read about it in the magazines.
Keanu getting ready for Speed.
That was around that time, I think. The girl that was in Speed with him, no, not Speed, Point Break with the short hair, she was training there all the time. I don't know what her name was.
There's tons of famous people, professional wrestlers, professional bodybuilders, actors, actresses, producers, directors. I mean, you name it. It's a conglomerate of, these high-level people just kind of in there training and working out. It's a strange dynamic, I guess.
Yeah, the Barbarian Brothers were there then. Remember the Barbarian Brothers?
Absolutely. The Barbarian Brothers, those guys were a bunch of savages. They used the entire stack on just about every exercise.
Yeah, I didn't understand. Like they were in overalls and shit in the gym and work boots, That wasn't something we saw in Massachusetts. So it was like a bit of a culture shock. And people with like very high afros and like that's outfits I've never seen before.
Yeah, remember you'd look in like Flex magazine and somebody would have sunglasses on in the gym, a stringer tank top, some weird frayed like cutoff shorts, a fanny pack, and those giant ass bodybuilding shoes. And you were like, what the hell is like? How long did it take somebody to get ready for the gym?
Oh, these guys were done up, And back then we wore the bushy socks and all that stuff to make our calves look bigger, and we wore the unitards.
Wait. What's this? Bushy socks to make the calves look bigger. I had to write Smokey, bushy socks. Write that down. We need bushy socks, make the calves look bigger. Hey, I'll utilize whatever trick we need to utilize.
That's part of that attire we talked about, bringing back the balloon pants and all that shit.
Oh yeah, the bum equipment.
Yeah, T. Michael.
So at 19, you were already pretty deep into this. When did you get into bodybuilding?
I started at 18. My 18th birthday, I actually joined the gym.
So you must have pretty good genetics. I mean, I know a lot of people want to push things off the genetic potential, and whenever there's a Mr. Olympia or somebody who's a professional at something, people are like, "Oh, it's genetics," but there must be a huge genetic component if you were able to grow that much and be successful in 1 year of bodybuilding.
You know what's crazy is I grew up in a kind of construction farm background, so I had a stocky body. I was an athlete. I was a football player in high
Would you
school.
say husky?
I don't know, not husky, because husky is kind of like, I think, fattish.
Yeah, that's
But but like fattish, beardish guys, you know?
yeah, I'm understanding. Yeah, we get very frustrated with that type around here.
Poor Smokey.
So, I was lean, and I was just, I'm 5'9", so I don't call myself short, but I'm not tall, right? I mean, it's the
Right.
ideal height. That's
Right.
biggest thing. People are like, oh, I thought you were taller in the magazines. I said, no, I was just wider, but not as tall. And for me, I had grown up with a athletic background, meaning I was just I was very physical. So like I had to work a lot. I did concrete work in my brother's business. I did farming work, but I was active kid. I did bike riding. I did all that stuff. Played sports in the neighborhood and everything. And in high school, I played football, but even before I get into football, I was always flexing for my sisters or brothers' friends. I was arm wrestling. I was a great arm wrestler even at 14, 15.
And you were flexing probably because you had some muscle.
I had
right?
muscles. I mean, I
So
was
like, hey, flex your arm, right?
I mean, it's funny because we can dig back into the photo albums, the family photo albums, and there's so many pictures of me flexing when I was like 5, 7, 9, because I had, little biceps and all that stuff. But I always wanted to be like a superhero. I mean, that was my thing. I remember I saw a picture of Chris Dickerson, who was a former Mr. Olympia, at 12, and I told my oldest brother, his name's Bob, and I said, this is what I want to look like. And he thought I was crazy. I mean, he's like, this guy's got muscles everywhere, why would you want to look like that? And I just to me, it kind of intrigued me a little bit. And that's kind of where I started with the idea of, I want to get into weight training. And I had that mindset. It just didn't happen until I was 18, and for many reasons.
What were some of the reasons? What were some of the hurdles in trying to get into it?
Because I was forced to work. I was forced to work a lot. I mean, I got the time, my family actually allowed me to play football, which they were begging me to come play football and do track. I just couldn't commit to track because there was only so much time I was working, like before school, after school, school vacations, weekends, and that was a family business. So there was no really set hours. It was like till we get the job done. So I was limited on what I could really do. And, when I did those team sports, it didn't really excite me. I was very good at it, but I was kind of an introvert, and I didn't have a lot of social. I didn't really want to be a social. And although I became really popular in school, and mostly because of my partying, like we partied a lot, that's really, I kind of enjoyed time by myself. And that's why I think I adapted so well when I started weight training at 18. But I was very limited with time, and that's why I didn't get into the weight training. Although
Partied a lot. What's that mean? Just like hung out or like drank or?
We drank. I would, drink alcohol. Obviously, we had huge parties. I had a lot of land. We had like 100 acres of farmland. So we'd have these big bonfire parties, and the whole school would show up.
Holy shit!
Even when I was a sophomore, everyone would, party at the Cutler house, and people would come there. We'd get kegs of beer.
I think, by the way, this is the East Coast thing because we
Yeah.
did the same thing.
And we would all party. There'd be 400 kids partying outside. And every weekend it was like, man, you could have another party. And of course, with the partying came, a lot of friends, and, people want to be friends with you and whatever. So I had some of the biggest parties in the history of my high school, I think.
What was like your introduction to weights? How'd you? I mean, I know you said you had a lot of interest in them, and then was there somebody that said, "Hey, let's go to a gym," or was there a coach or mentor right off the bat, or you just made a decision one day, I'm going to get a gym membership because I'm 18?
I started watching Rocky movies. I think that's kind of inspired me in the beginning, and of course I heard of Arnold. The funny thing is I didn't watch Pumping Iron until later, but I started looking at magazines off magazine racks, and that's kind of how I got introduced. I remember going in GNC and seeing very limited amount of supplements. It was more just vitamins and stuff like that. And I started reading books from there. The first book I ever read at 16 was this Beyond Built by Bob Paris. That was, kind of my guideline. Ended up writing a book later that kind of mimicked that, but that was the first book that I ever read that was instructional training. And I kind of took a lot of those theories and a lot of those exercises that he posted in that book, and that's what I put towards my training, although I was more visual, so I watched guys work out in the gym.
Did he ever know that? Does Bob Paris?
I'm sure he knows because I've mentioned it so many times. And Chris Dickerson knows. He was the first bodybuilder I ever saw in a magazine. And I just had this vision of, okay, this is what I want to do, but I knew I was partying too much and I wasn't on a good diet. And I learned about the nutrition aspect, and to this day I preach nutrition. Anyone that speaks to me or listens to my seminars or have read what I speak about, it's nutrition, because nutrition is the key to all building the ultimate body. You know that yourself. I mean, your body composition has changed a lot. So for me, it was like, okay, I know the structure that needs to be there. I'm not willing to commit to that until I graduated high school and I started actually going to college. I joined the gym on August 3rd, 1991, which is my birthday. I was turning 18. And I joined the local Gold's Gym, which was Worcester, Massachusetts, right outside my hometown. And then I didn't start training until the fall. I started school like probably 2 weeks later. In college, I was pursuing a degree in criminal justice. And that's when I stopped working for the family business and I could focus on school and working out. And that's how it all started.
What was the family business? You mentioned some farming and some construction.
Concrete work. My brother's still in that business. All their kids are working in it now. But they wanted me to be involved with that, which I hated it. I did it from 11 to 18. And I knew that wasn't how I wanted to live the rest of my life.
What did your parents think of bodybuilding?
They didn't like it in the beginning. They were just kind of like, this is kind of stupid. It really doesn't, I don't understand how you can make a living at it. And I didn't actually, that was my whole goal was, man, if I could just finance myself. I used to see guys pictured in magazines next to Ferraris. I thought every guy was rich that lifted weights, on Muscle and Fitness.
Right.
Little did I know, sooner or later, most of the guys don't make a lot of revenue,
That wasn't their car.
Yeah. It was called what they call today posers,
Right.
So they were kind of confused. And listen, 7 kids, I'm the youngest. No one lifted weights. My dad was 65. He had raised kids already that weren't into that kind of stuff. So he just thought, okay, if you're not using a shovel or a hammer, how are you going to make money? Because that's how we grew up. And I had a huge opportunity in front of me in the family business. Although he was favored towards me going to college, because a lot of my brothers and sisters never graduated high school, but they were hard workers and they were very successful. That's just how we grew up. I mean, kind of like, I was making money at 11 years old and buying all my own stuff. I had a car registered and insured when I was 14. I drove without a driver's license. I mean, that's just what it was, And I was, very successful, and I made a lot of money in high school because I worked for the family business. So I was able to go out to dinner. I bought my own clothes, and I was doing well, enough financially. Although once I got into weight training, it wasn't as easy because I stopped working for the business, and I was working like real jobs, doing security, and I worked as a line cook. I worked on a golf course. I was making between $5 and $7 an hour. So I'd have to work a lot of hours to afford my chicken breasts and the gas for cars. I mean, shit, I drive to the gym. I remember driving to the gym, and back then gas was 99 cents a gallon. I remember running out of gas, but I didn't care because I was, heading to the gym. So I'd scrounge up change. I remember putting 99 cents in my car sometimes, just enough to get back and forth to the gym.
Many times. Been there myself.
But you know what? I didn't care because I was hitting gym, and, back then it's like we were training in, I was training in tights, and I was huge I was a big squatter. I was able to do a lot of weights, and right away I was adapted to the weight training, faster than most of the kids were. As a matter of fact, like I joined the gym in August, and by Christmas time, all the guys were asking me in the gym that I thought were huge, like, what am I doing? Because I was progressing so quickly. And then by the spring, I was competing in my first show, and I got second in my first contest, and that wasn't even a year into training.
A lot of people use money as like a crutch, and they'll say, I don't have the money to like jump into some of that. But it sounds like you figured out a way.
You know what? I did have, my mom helped me a lot. My mom helped me with the food, and I did, I put everything towards it. I drove a piece of shit car, and, I was scrounging up as little. I didn't do any other activities. It was strictly, all my money was spent on trying to better my body. And I had saved money, fortunately, through my teenage years, so I was able to live off that for quite some time. So I was able to finance at least the food and, the transportation, and I was going to college, like I said. So, I finished my two-year degree, and when I graduated with my associates in criminal justice, I was actually competing at the teen nationals, which I won as a teenager. And from then on, I knew, okay, this is going to be my career. This is what I want to do.
Where do you think some of the drive came from? Just it came from your parents giving you some foundation, some structure, it sounds like?
My drive was being forced to do what I had to do in the family business. At the point when I was 11, 12, 13, all the way to 18, I hated my dad and my brothers because I remember them dragging me out of bed, especially in high school when I used to party. I mentioned those parties. I mean, I would be like hungover, and they'd be like, "You have to get up and go to work at 6 o'clock." And I'm like, "I just got in an hour ago." And for me, it was just partying and girls. That's all I cared about in high school. And I didn't care about, it was a family business, so I had no real structure at work. I showed up, we worked 14-hour days, and they taught me the discipline. So later that set me up for definitely when I set out to do certain goals. As a Cutler, we never failed at what we did. So that discipline was there. The dedication had to be there because I was dedicated to working so much, and that work ethic really carried over from that working family, the blue collar stuff.
Right. And it's monotonous, concrete. It's concrete. It's the same. It's the same process every single time.
It was the same. We waited for the sun to come up, and we were working under headlights at night because as a family business, you don't care about hourly wage, right? Even though I was paid by the hour, we were working literally 14, 15-hour days. And I remember, it's crazy because I would pray in the morning. I remember saying, please get me through this day, because I couldn't wait to be able to do something at night, and hoping that the day passed so fast. I mean, so many people wake up and they want to just get through their days, right, because they just don't like what they do. And that's how I was. I mean, I used to pray every morning, please make this day pass faster. And that's when I knew, after years and years of doing it, that wasn't my passion.
Did your dad or brother also make you interact with the customers? Or are you more like grunt work?
I was grunt work, but I was still, I was very mature for my age.
Yeah.
Everyone that met me didn't realize I was a 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kid.
Because that's a big component too, having a business like that. I mean, you can't have anybody damage it, and you must have learned a little bit of how to deal with people in a certain way, I guess.
To be honest, I grew up around adults, so for me, I acted like an adult, and I carried myself, very professionally, and I carried conversation, and I knew what was going on. It wasn't like I just was there as a body. I had to know the business. I learned the business. I was good at what I did. But I was also a beast. I was lugging concrete forms around, and I had the structure. That the illusion of me, everyone thought I was older then. And
what did you weigh?
Almost 200. And I was lean. So
yeah.
When you're 16, 17, that's why I was a great football player. I was bigger,
right.
faster, stronger than most of the kids. I mentioned I benched 315 in high school, without even really lifting weights. It's for that, that was people used to, I remember being at basketball games, and everyone would come in. It was like an audience, and they'd say, Jay, come on, let's watch you bench 315, because no one did that shit, you know? So we all go in the weight room, and they'd watch me bench press, and everyone be mind blown that I could actually do that much weight.
You think that helped a little bit, starting your lifting a little bit later? Even you did start as a teenager, but a lot of people start, I started at 11, 12 years old. Do you think that was an advantage for you later on, starting a little bit later?
I don't think that's really that late, to be honest. I ask these kids nowadays. Kids younger are starting because it's more apparent now. But I thought that was a right time. When you're, kind of maturing, and
right.
I just, I think my mindset was right then. So I think it just worked out perfectly. I look back at my career, and as we get deeper into conversation about it, I don't really regret anything. I thought that was the right age for me to start. I was more focused on okay, this is a turning point in my life. This is really what I want to do. I started pursuing, like, what my passion learned was weightlifting. I mean, I love to be in the gym, and I always tell everyone it wasn't about the body, it was about the mind at first. And then it turned into, when I saw the progression of the body, that's really what kept me motivated to continue. And I saw huge progression.
When did you learn about anabolic steroids? Because that is a part of bodybuilding. And so with you seeing these bodybuilders and like even Sylvester Stallone, was there a point where you kind of learned about it and you were like, wait, what? Or did you kind of know about it progressively as you were diving into it?
I knew about it, and it was more apparent when I showed up at the Teen Nationals. I could see guys in better condition and, like, guys that have more mature muscle at 17, 18, 19. And that's when I realized, wow, this is something that if I'm going to continue to do, I'm going to have to dabble in something like that. And I didn't know much about, like, the deep ins and outs of training for a contest and what you needed to do, but I knew about testosterone. I mean, of course, I watched the Rocky movies at 12 and saw Ivan Drago taking his testosterone shots.
What a cheater. Stallone would never do that.
Yeah,
the United States
right.
would never act that way.
So I thought, shit, that's the way, but of course at 12, you think you're influenced. The movie means, okay, he lost and steroids aren't the answer, right?
Right.
So,
Son of a bitch.
Yeah.
As you got into it further, or just even like seeing more modern day bodybuilding and seeing the size that people have grown to, it seems like there's people are confused. A lot of people think it's just drugs, and a lot of people think the guy that gets the first place trophy just took a lot more shit than everybody else. What are some of your thoughts on that?
I think it's bullshit, because when I started training, I worked with, I mentioned, when I started about 6 months in, I met Chris Aceto, who trained me for almost my whole career, who was a great nutritionist. He actually graduated first in his class, exercise and nutrition, at Springfield College, which a lot of people don't know. And he taught me a lot about the nutrition aspect. And the funny thing is we rarely talked about drugs, and because that really wasn't one of those things. I mean, as a teenager, you really, I had the physique and I was progressing super fast, and everything was very, very basic. And that's the way I kind of believed. And I saw success right away from that. So I wasn't eyeing, okay, well, to move forward, I need to do a ton of drugs or anything like that shit. I mean, it was kind of like voodoo, right? No one talked about it. And we didn't have the internet, so you couldn't read about, like, cycles and that kind of stuff. The magazines definitely didn't talk about it. Every guy was natural in the magazines. And, every guy was just like, took the supplements, the Weeder, the chewable branch chain aminos or whatever they were selling at the time. So for me, to see what's happened now and see what people's perception is of what everyone takes, including myself when I was winning Mr. Olympia titles, it's just, I mentioned you guys earlier, when you're a Mr. Olympia contender, like there's been 13, right? I was number 11. Listen, we're destined for greatness, take the drugs in or out. Drugs aren't going to make that person, because you have to have the structure, you have to have the mindset, you have to have the muscle capability to manage that much size and that much condition on stage, balance, all that symmetry, those things you talk about. And I just think that society is becoming so jaded with how they perceive, like, what it takes to be at the top, and they want shortcuts. And we talk about that, you touched on an important thing, was a work ethic. And a lot of today's society lacks that, because it's the upbringing that brings that, that blue collar shit that you don't hear about anymore. Like, me sitting there telling you I prayed every day to get through my work days.
Yeah.
Like, that shit's like, that's what makes a person. And I never was the most genetically gifted guy on that Olympia stage, but I trained my ass off, and I knew how to diet, and I was always on track with everything. I mean, everything was structured. I lived in a fucking box in order to be the best, meaning I had no outside. People would call me with their problems, I'd hang up on them. Like, the phones were off. Don't bother me with negative shit. And I just went at it. And I think now the bodies, yes, there's some drug-induced bodies. I think it's got out of control. I mean, you talk about all these peptides and all the bullshit now that goes into it. These people come up and ask me questions. I mean, I was in Houston this past weekend, and they're like, hey, what do you think about this? I don't even know these fucking terms anymore. These people
Right.
use. I mean, I have no idea. I know about testosterone. I know about a few cutting agents and whatever, but it's not something I'm even educated on. So I can't even speak on it. And people look at me like, oh, he's full of shit. But it's a different era now.
Right.
And I think that the internet's fucked everything up. And I think that the magazines, you know, they gave a certain amount of information the right way. And once it became live on the net and you got these kamikaze type people, I think it kind of threw a wrench in a lot of things and influenced a lot of these young kids.
What is it about some of the stuff with the internet that you don't like? There's a lot of positives to it, obviously, too. But what are some things that you don't like about the internet?
It gives everyone a voice that don't know what they're talking about. I mean, I think really that's
Right.
opinions, right? I can post a picture on Instagram and say, hey, you know, what do you think my best body part is or whatever? And everyone's going to go from calves all the way to the, you know, neck, you know, and they're going to say, oh, your back and this and that. And then they're going to say, well, Ronnie Coleman had a better back. That's not the question I asked, right? It was about which body part was my best.
Yeah, fuck you, Ronnie Coleman.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think he's the greatest ever, but, you know, we did our battles and,
Right.
you know, people have their opinions. Like judges had theirs. I didn't necessarily agree with the judging. I think a lot of it was off, but I have a lot in my favor too. So it's not like I'm going to sit there and rag on the judging. But listen, man, the fans are fickle like that. They have their favorites, and you know you're hot for a while, and then once you win a few, they hate you.
Right.
But fortunately for me, I've carried a huge fan base of all ages. I still travel tremendously, and I'm still respected in this business to a lot of people, and that's why I continue to do what I do, and that's what drives me today.
What did it take for you to be the best? You know, for each person, it's different. Some people meditate and do weird shit, right? And some people will just. You mentioned to me like that you had coaches that worked on flexibility. You got a lot of soft tissue work. It sounded to me like that you took this as a job. Almost. What's weird about it is it sounds like you put yourself in the same prison that you were in when you were a kid, and you went to work that way.
I think I tortured myself, to be honest.
Society that maybe liked some of that.
I lived a very structured lifestyle, and I don't know how it is in the powerlifting world, but like we're kind of there's a lot of superstition, right? Of like getting off trends. So like
Getting off trend.
yeah, trends.
Got to get off that trend cough.
So with me, like I was contracted, right? Most of my career. I mean, Joe Weider signed me to contract when I was 23, and I was paid to work out, which was amazing to me. So I was getting a check no matter what. But I didn't take advantage of that, which I think a lot of guys do. So my life was structured where I'd still get up at 6 or 7 in the morning, and I would train whatever twice a day. I'd be in bed at 9 or 10 o'clock, and then the day would start the next day. So I treated it with a solid routine. You know, I followed the diet regimens, like I said, and you know everything was on point. But I think the dedication and the commitment to what I do, I mean, that's really what makes the athlete. You know, I like I said, I wasn't genetically gifted in certain areas, but I made up for it with the hard work, and that comes from the background, obviously the upbringing, but I was also stubborn as hell, right? I mean, I was told I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that. I was told I wouldn't be a good pro. I was told I'd never turn pro, never win the Olympia, never win it more than once. After I lost it, they said then I'd come back and win it again. So I think a lot of that's a little ego too. I mean, you have to have a little ego to be able to do what I do and be great at it. But I think everyone in their own right is destined for greatness. It just depends on what platform or what level they're willing to put out. And you know, for me, it was the fitness bodybuilding thing that allowed me to showcase my best talents.
You need to have an ego, especially to get up in front of people like that and pose in a little pair of underwear. Right? I mean,
honestly, dude, in the beginning, I thought it was so fucking weird. You know, like my mom is like, you know, she didn't get it. Like we put on that dye and you know, shaving the body like you're gonna do here in a couple months. It's so strange. And, you know, you're like orange, right? And you get up on stage and under the lights and you hit these poses and, you know, you have to learn how to show your strong points but hide your weaknesses. And everyone has weaknesses,
and also be somewhat entertaining. I mean, it's not just flexing, right?
It's not. You got to be comfortable, which it's not. I mean,
if you don't look comfortable, they're going to recognize that.
Yeah, and it's for me, like, that wasn't the fun part about what I did. The best part was training in the gym. Like, I love to train. Like, I still to this day I love to train. But it was like the changes in the body, and that was enough for me. But I was forced to get on stage because that was the only place that I could showcase what I worked for in the gym.
I think we feel the same with powerlifting. We don't really love the platform that much. We love the gym.
And probably some of your best lifts happened in the gym and not in a competition, right?
Yeah, some of the things I'm more proud of did happen in the gym, and it's for different reasons. You pour so much into the actual competition itself that in some weird way it almost makes you sick. You're like, fuck, I just don't even want to think about any of that.
Like, if you had like a Saturday, Sunday where all the guys would get together and you guys would converse in between. Like on the stage, you don't have that shit, right? All the people that helped get you there have to sit in the audience and you wonder what they're thinking because they're up there with you, just
right.
with, not standing next to you, but they're living with you. So, like, it's just not the best place to showcase what kind of got you there. And I felt like I was a little outside myself when I was up on stage until I got really comfortable. Shit, I remember guest posing and I really wasn't that comfortable until I got really good at it. And then, it was just like, okay, I'm coming up here. Just let me collect this trophy and go back to my normal life. That's how I kind of felt for the competitions. So it really, if you ever look at my victories and my losses, especially in Olympia, I had no reaction because I didn't really care. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I mean, I worked my ass off, but I won that shit already, like, before I showed up because it was always challenges to myself, not what the judges decided and what the audience approval was.
You were better than you were the year before, and you knew it, and you weren't.
I was better just through the obstacles that are thrown at you in preparation, right? Every year, obstacles were thrown at me. So for me, it was like, okay, I can stand up and showcase this, but it doesn't represent really what happened in the 16 weeks or even the 50 weeks that it took to get there. So it was just like a minute that I was standing up there and flexing with a bunch of guys and then, either grabbing a trophy or not and going home and going back to the same life. I mean, it didn't change anything. It changed how busy I was or whatever. But listen, man, I was happy either way. Whether I won or lost, it really didn't make much difference in my life. Like some people take it more serious than others. I was winning just being able to do what I love to do. Let's see if that makes any sense.
What about when you were by yourself? Like, later that night or when you kind of thought about it and you're sitting there and you have your trophy or you're sitting there with your second place trophy. I mean, did you break down and cry whether you won or lost, or was there like some sort of weird emotion that started to happen?
You know what? It's not as good to look at, right? I mean, the second place is, that built my character because it made the first that much better. But honestly, it didn't affect me either way. And I sat with my team and, because I always had a team. And I was like, is this, what can we do to be better? Whether I won or lost, see, it was always the same discussion. That's the craziest thing. Like, I won the Mr. Olympia 4 times, and those 4 times, just like the 6 times I got second, it was the same discussion. Like, okay, who looked good? How can I improve? What areas are better? What areas need work? It was the same discussions. Like, there was no difference. So for me, it was just back to the drawing board. Let's get this shit done. Let's move forward and try to improve my body and enjoy that year process of getting back in the gym and training for it. That's just really what it was.
Just the attitude of always trying to figure out a way to get better.
Dude, it's never sad. It's like going and looking in the mirror, which I did, 150 times a day, right? And I hit those poses and I say, I need bigger arms, or I need bigger calves, or I need bigger, cuts and, this right leg or whatever. Like, there was always improvements I needed to make, and I was always a perfectionist. Because I think bodybuilding, like, you sit there and call us athletes or whatever you want to call us, hobbyists, or I think it's more artist. I don't know if necessarily powerlifting is an art, although the technique I would consider an art form. I think with bodybuilding, like, you're a fucking artist, bro. You're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're saying, okay, how can I create the best body for my genetics, right? visually, how can I create? Because it's a visual thing, right? We're judged on visibility, and we're judged on how everything is put together and flows together. And it's your preference. Like you're made with a certain structure. So you're not going to have that. I didn't have a small waist. I needed to get bigger shoulders. My quads were outrageous, but that's what's just given to me. The calves weren't non-existent. I remember my sister saying to me when I was 20, saying, "Why are your calves so small compared to your legs?" And that fucking killed me, So,
did you ever end up with some body image issues, like going through this process? I mean, it sounds like it's, day in and day out. I guess I'll just use the word ridicule, like almost ridicule, and you being like really paying attention to your triceps and your biceps and your forearms. You ever kind of develop, like if you ever feel you get done with a show and you feel fat and like, I don't know, all these different things might run through your head?
I really didn't have any because I felt like I was pretty complete, man. I mean, at 20, I was packed with muscle and everything kind of flowed by that point, although I did need to improve density. I mentioned density. I mean, that's just years and years of training. Comparable to like when I stood next to Coleman, I'm like, fuck, my back needs work. But he had the best back in the world.
Huge.
And, I had great legs from the front, but from the back, he demolished me a lot of years. And, it's like, it's a trade-off, right? If standing there, I had better abs and the whole flow looked better. But when he turned around, he just wiped everybody out. That's what helped him win 8 titles. And listen, the guy trained like a beast. And I used to watch his training stuff and saying, damn, how can he do that? I'm not that strong. I wanted to be that strong.
Did that ever influence your training? Did
it did.
Ever steer you the wrong way a little bit?
It did influence me, although I didn't push past my limitations because everything was repetitions. I wasn't 1 or 2 rep guy. So I was always in a safe zone because I never did a weight that I couldn't do for more than under 8 repetitions. So for me, I was still somewhat smart, but I fell into that, Ronnie training like he did and T-bar rowing, 9 plates and bent rows with 4 or 5 plates. I mean, that's just insane. And squatting 800 pounds. I mean, but I wasn't going to put on a squat suit and, take 20 minutes between each exercise. That wasn't my thing. What you saw in my videos was just everyday shit. Nothing was made up. And I knew eventually he was going to get older and he was going to start breaking down. And that's, I think, where it actually came into play.
How old is Ronnie Coleman?
54. I think he's 10 years older than me.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So you were talking about like how genetics didn't play, a part in, majority of your career, but would you say like the mindset and the attitude of like finding pleasure in pain, is that something that maybe was genetically passed down to you?
Yeah, but I think I mentioned this in a documentary. I said, you got to be a little mental, I think, to do what I did.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where I don't want to sound crazy, but you have to be a little fucked up in order to. It's like a fighter, right? Going in and wanting to just draw blood, right?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make any sense. It's like you want to be bigger, but you've gotten up to 300 pounds and you're virtually all muscle, and you're like, my shoulders are small. Like, so you do have to be a little. You do have to be I guess kind of off the charts a little bit. You can't.
I think sitting in this room. I mean, there's a few people here, but I think I'm talking to you, so we're just at a different mindset than most people. But I have a fiance now, okay, and she says she knew me when I was big, like she knew of me,
right?
And she's like, I never would have dated you like that. And I met her when I was like 280.
Yeah.
So it's not that much different.
Right.
But they visually see something different when your clothes are off and you're on stage tanned and posing. She's like, I said, why not? She's like, because you're just too big. And I thought it was okay. Like now I see it and I was like, damn, I was kind of a mess,
A freak.
So, yeah, I mean.
Well, I think a lot of people say that. Sometimes we've had athletes on the show before that are in tremendous shape. Someone like Brooke Wells, someone like Brooke Entz, some of these CrossFit girls. And people have said this a lot about fitness girls and bodybuilding girls. And you don't hear it as much about men, but women will say it about men as well. Women will be like, oh, I would never want to be with someone who's 250 or 260. And then you're like, that's what The Rock weighs. And then they're like, oh.
Yeah, but he's
well,
6'5".
Yeah, I know. But then they'll be like, oh, well, damn, And I think it depends on the way someone's built. It depends on, how it looks. But if somebody's like pumped up, if The Rock's pumped up and he's in the middle of a training session, he's going to look a lot more intimidating. Veins are going to be popping out. It's going to look way different than if you just see a picture of him in GQ magazine or something, right?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the thing too, is a lot of people meet me in person, and even when I was big, you know, I didn't look like I looked in posing trunks on a bodybuilding stage. It was more, I wasn't covered with veins, and, you know, off season you put on some water and you put on like a little layer of body fat over you, even though I wasn't holding a ton of fat. It's not as scary, right? My mom questioned it. You know, she was always like, man, you know, is this really what you want to look like? And truthfully, I can tell you, Mark, I said, you know, my goal was to be a certain weight. When I started, I said I wanted to be 240, and I would cut it off at 240. But what I realized as I got closer to, you know, competing, the competing side pushed me to be bigger, because I got closer and closer to winning the best title in the world. And why stop now? If I can become the best in the world, then it's like, okay, I reached the pinnacle. And not many guys were able to say that. So why waste the ride that I've been having, and I'm going to go all the way to the top. And that's kind of how it kind of was by circumstance, to be honest, because if you go back to my first DVD, which early on was my social media outlets, I released DVDs every year, training videos. I actually said in a cut above, which you can find on YouTube, I said, you know, I never plan on being Mr. Olympia. It wasn't an ultimate goal. And until I stood next to Ronnie Coleman in 2001 on a very controversial second, is when I first realized that, holy shit, I can win this thing. And that's when I really pursued the Mr. Olympia title. And, you know, the rest from there, I mean, the fucking mindset of, like, getting up every day and pushing yourself till I felt like I was going to have a heart attack. And I mean, there was times where I almost passed out training because I couldn't breathe. And in Vegas, the heat, I remember doing walking lunges outside, you know, training for Olympia in August, and I'm lunging with, you know, 225 on my back in the parking lot, and it's 120 degrees on the pavement. And I remember just like, okay, no one else is doing this, so I'm going to do it. And that was my mindset. I mean, you can read the stories. I used to train in the middle of the night because no one else was doing it.
I've heard Mike Tyson talk about that with his road work. You know, he'd wake up like 3:30 and go run at 4.
and you know, that was how I like mind fucked everybody else. You know, I would make sure that I posted up something, you know, hey, I'm training at this time. So people are like, man, is that the secret? Is that what Jay has to do? Is that what we have to do? And I did it almost to kind of like play mind games with the other guys and say, hey, you're not doing the work that I'm doing. And it made me feel, it helped my ego too.
You know, I think you mentioned something that I think, have you ever written a book before?
I have, yeah.
I got a title for your book because I think that this is the most important piece of the puzzle that I've heard so far, is not the 4-time Mr. Olympia, but the 6-time second. Actually would be a great title for a book, because I think that's
only one in history to 6 runner-ups.
Yeah, I think that's a big deal though, because that's a decade. It's a decade of being up there on the stage, and I think that's a big part of it. And to persevere, and your 4 victories, they weren't in a row either, right?
No, I had one break in between the 2.
That's a big deal too. Like losing and coming back, and winning again. That's a huge deal.
I skipped 2002. I mean, I was building a house in Vegas, so I actually sat out, which is the year Ronnie came in smaller after I had him on the ropes in 2001. If you asked me if it was close to any regret in my career, that would be sitting out that contest. But I just mentally couldn't prepare because of the move to Vegas, building the new house, and kind of restructuring my life, moving from California. I just felt it wasn't suitable to go into Olympia preparation. So for me, you know, I do kind of regret that a little bit. Leveroni fell into my second place slot, but I would have came in there and probably, you know, beat up Ronnie pretty heavy. That's the year Gunter Schlierkamp beat him at the show of strength. And so it showed that Ronnie had some vulnerability. But the problem is everyone pissed Ronnie off that year, and he came back in 2003 and just fucking demolished everybody else, you know, including myself.
He started training like a maniac.
Well, no, he just came in bigger. You know, he said, I'm not going to shrink down anymore. I'm just going to come in like I want to come in, not what the judges want. And that's how I went in every show. I was bigger, smaller. I didn't give a shit. I just went in there, and like I told you, it was a personal thing for me. It wasn't like, okay, who's going to decide for me to be the best at this? I'm going to show up at the Olympia I want. So I mean, we talk about weights. I mean, I've competed there 275, 255, 260, 265. And, you can ask me what the best weight is. I say around 260, but my whole goal was to be, okay, how do I want to show up this year?
You mentioned nutrition being a huge component of it. I mean, the nutrition side of it is the most consistent, constant thing that there is, because you got to eat, 5 to 6 times a day. In your case, I think you said 7 meals every day.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like? I mean, that must have been terrible. Like
that sucked, yeah.
For the most part, I mean, you're kind of stuffing in calories that you don't even want, especially in the off season, right?
I force fed a lot of meals. I mean, obviously, I'm hungry for breakfast, and I'm hungry like before I train or whatever.
Like force fed to the point of like gagging kind of thing?
I mean, it took me an hour to eat meals. I mean, you're eating 12 to 16 ounces of meat and 100 to 150 grams of carbs every meal, and you're doing that 7 times, and you do it day in, day out. Like, even when you're dieting for a competition, you're still eating that much food to maintain a massive body.
Now, that must have took a period of time to build up to,
right? Of course it did. But
yeah.
I started with a 6-meal. I mean, when I met Chris Aceto at 18, he made me a 6-meal-a-day diet. I followed it to the T, so meaning I ate the same foods at the same time every day. I posted on my refrigerator, and that's the meal plan that I followed. And eventually the food went up and up and up as the body weight continued to climb. Obviously, the demand for calories changes as your body composition changes. You build more muscle mass. So I was able to start, increase until, we reached past that 240. We went to 260, 280, 300 pounds. I was able to eat more and more food just to have that maintenance and the round muscle bellies. And the carbohydrates is a huge source of, the fluid in the muscle. You talked about earlier, we were having a discussion at lunch about the cushion of the body when you train. And that allowed me to train with heavier weights, too, as the carbohydrates. I feel like, if it makes any sense, like when you're on like a keto diet and it's just protein, I don't feel there's a lot of glycogen, even though it will convert. You don't have that cushion. You don't have that retention of the muscle where when you go through weights, almost like you're fucking pumping rocks instead of pumping like balloons, right?
Right.
So, like
I think Stan Efferding had a good analogy on the podcast where he said, you can use an elevator to get to the top of the Empire State Building, or you can use the stairs. And a keto diet, in terms of maximum performance, especially when it comes to like in the gym and trying to maximize muscle growth, would probably fall into that slot.
It's a good analogy.
It might be decent at burning fat, and for me, what I always try to share with everybody is I utilize it because it gives me the best self-control. If you give me carbohydrates, I'm going to probably end up eating ice cream and everything else and eat shitty carbohydrates. So for me, the keto diet allows me to manage my calories better, which is all it really broke down to for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I never tried the keto thing. It wasn't my thing. You
didn't reduce carbs even going into a show or anything?
Not so much. I mean, of course, at certain times I had to be restrictive because I needed to lean down, but it seemed like towards the end, which is the times I remember the most because, those were the exciting points of the diet. It was never the 16 weeks out or the 12 weeks that were exciting because I'm like, okay, let's get this shit over with.
Right.
No one wants to diet. There's no fun portion of getting ready for a bodybuilding show. So I was like, okay, the last 4 weeks, it was like, okay, I'm carbing consistently in order to continue to improve my body and get fullness back so I can compete and beat these guys. Because I used to out-muscle people. I wasn't a balanced guy. I wasn't like small waist and aesthetics. Like that was bullshit to my winnings. My winnings was going up there and hitting most musculars and just blasting people off the stage. That's what I look forward to. Like I wanted to out-muscle the hell out of everybody. And that's what I did, and that's how my victories came. And I was known as a so-called mass monster, and that's what I thought bodybuilding was. I mean, I don't see any crazy mass monsters. I mean, Phil Heath's got a lot of mass for his frame, but like a big Ramy is considered like a mass monster now, or Rolly Winkler, whatever these guys, where they just blast people with muscle. I wasn't into those aesthetic, slow posing routines. I thought that was just not something I was interested in. I went out there and I just, got the crowd, stuck the tongue out and did what I did, to get the crowd riled up. That's entertainment for me because bodybuilding is so boring,
Yeah, it can be.
I mean, it is. I mean, it's not even it is. Like,
yeah.
When you're not knocking somebody out or hitting home runs or beating someone with touchdowns. I mean, to me, it's like you got to have some excitement. So the guys with muscle, the things that's going to get the crowd kind of fired up. And the small
That's what Vince McMahon
guys,
was trying to do.
of course.
That was before your time, probably, right?
No, it was just when I was coming in, yeah. 1990. I started training in 91, but I mean, I looked at those guys. Gary Stridham was in that. And a lot of guys, transpired over that. I think Ferrigno was actually in it for a minute. Those guys were paid a lot of money, and they tried to do it. But I think it was a little corny, too. Like,
Yeah.
The dress-ups and shit. I mean, but the characters were kind of cool.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to try to add an entertainment value to anything that you have, whether it's bodybuilding or powerlifting. How the hell else are you gonna get people to watch it?
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, I think social media has helped in some ways. You have like Men's Physique. I think they got rid of women's bodybuilding, right?
Yeah, they did. It's gone.
And they have some other avenues for the chicks to get involved in. But when you first started, they didn't have a lot of that stuff. Didn't have any of it, right?
No, it was strictly men's and women's bodybuilding. But, to touch on the social media thing, that's why the social media people without accolades of like titles or achievements, like they have more followers because they do shit that's exciting. I mean, what's a bodybuilder do besides eat chicken breasts and go to the gym and pump up chest? There's no real like personalities. And I was victim of that too. I mean, I didn't like cameras in my face. I was very serious about what I did. I had to learn to come out of my shell some. And now on social media, I have to be more of a normal person, but I'm allowed to do that because I'm not driven towards that one goal. I mean, I thrive in business, but some of the stuff is not business related to.
You know what's fascinating though is somebody that has the drive and the determination to be a 4-time Mr. Olympia. So it's not like you have to jump over a car or anything like that. You know what I mean? It's still intriguing enough, and that's why so many people want to have you do seminars and have you at these speaking engagements all the time.
Yeah, I think they look at the mindset. I mean, I think that's really what drives you to be able to do what you do at the highest level. I mean, it intrigues people because how many people can say they were the best in the world at what they did? It's still like when I say it to you, I don't look at myself like that. Like I don't look at like, hey, I accomplished like being the best bodybuilder in the world 4 times. Like I have to constantly be reminded of it because I'm still in mindset. Like I'm the kid in Massachusetts with a dream and wanting to move to California and riding a motorcycle as a cop, like watching Chips and all those things. So
that's why I tell people dream harder than you work. Like you have to really work hard, right? You have to put in a lot of work. Everybody already knows that, but you got to hold on to your dream because you got to have a belief in yourself. Mm-hmm. You got to not let go of that, not let anything deter you from that.
Yeah, and I mean we have obstacles. I mean, there's a lot of things that are thrown at you, and people can make excuses or they can say screw it and move forward. And I think, we talk about the injuries. I mean, we've all had it. Some people quit because of that, or they just stop and then they fall out of it. But listen, man, if it's your passion, you're going to continue to do it, right? And I tell everyone, don't do something because you look at it as like, oh, it's just optional, right? You got to do what's your passion. Otherwise, you're never going to succeed at it. You're never going to stay with it. You're never going to commit to it. And you're never going to give your full ability towards that goal. And I think we all have some sort of passion for whatever it is. If you like to paint or if you like, if you like cars, like work on cars or, I it just happened to be me. I like to weightlift. And, I didn't sit there and say, oh, I want to be Mr. Olympia. Like it was a goal later. But I wanted to have a great body. I didn't say, oh, I'm going to go win this or win that because I didn't even know what the hell it was, half of this stuff.
Right.
But, how much, it's like you set a goal. I want to bench press this or I want to squat this. I don't, whatever your best lift is. You were a bench presser, right?
Yeah, predominantly, yeah.
So,
I bench pressed in powerlifting. In a bench shirt, I bench 854, and without a bench shirt, I bench 578.
Okay, so, but what about the squat? Like
squat, I did 1,080, and without a squat suit, I did 700.
What do you consider though your best lift?
I think everybody knows me for bench pressing.
Okay, so obviously you put your focus towards that probably more than you did the squats or the deadlift, right? Because why? Because you were great at it, right?
Yeah, it's a strength.
Yeah, so your mindset is like, okay, this is what I'm good at. I'm going to shoot for this, and that's going to be your goal.
And the confidence that I had on that exercise was just different than everything else. I always kind of struggled with the deadlift, and so it's hard to get that out of your mind, even as much as you're trying to coach yourself out of it, even as much as you're trying to give yourself positive self-talk. You don't have that same reinforcement of like blasting it up every time. I could be sick, I could be injured, I could have just about anything going on, and I could always figure out a way to bench press.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like LeBron James. He was a great football player too.
Yeah.
But he chose basketball instead because that was probably what he felt he was better at, right? But he had the option. A lot of these football players or basketball players, they were great at either one. I mean, look at these guys. I mean, Jordan played baseball. All these people but they just choose what they think they'll dominate. And they probably had a passion for the other things too, but you chase whatever your passion or whatever you believe that your best of your abilities can go after. And that's bodybuilding was it for me.
You have to have longevity in order to be
Mhm.
good at anything. You know,
Yes.
it took you, how long did it take you to get on an Olympia stage?
I was 25 at my first, so I mean from 18 to 25.
Yeah. It takes almost 10 years to get anywhere, right? And then it took you about another 10 to win.
Yeah, it took 33 was my first win.
Right.
And, I mean, I was great at 20. Don't get me wrong. I was professional. I turned professional at 23. And, with a couple years, but I was second to last at that first Olympia. So
Yeah.
does it really count?
Right. And even for you, you seem to be a quick study, you know, like most people won't have that same amount of success that fast probably.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned, you know, along with the food, I think you told me that you had, 800 to 1,000 grams of carbs, sometimes even like going into a show.
Yeah.
That's
Crazy,
insane.
right?
That's insane. And now, do you think that was something that just worked well for you, or do you think that that people are similar and they can eat their way into something like that, or train their way into something like that?
I see guys smaller than me that can do the same at this point. You know, it really comes down to what their body does to simulate those carbs or how hard they train, what their output is.
Mm.
I'm a firm believer in like letting your body do the work and feed it what it needs. So if you want to train and you want to do a ton of cardio, you want to have volume sets, you're going to have to feed the body to adapt to that. If you want to train less and do heavier weights, lower repetitions, longer rest between sets, maybe that you don't need as much calories. It really depends on your output. And I was very active. I would do a lot of things. I was running a lot of business and I was traveling a lot, even, when I was training at the highest level. So I was never a guy that sit on the couch and play video games or sit and watch movies all day. I was always moving around. So maybe that had something to do with it. And, the carbohydrate, like I said, I was a lean guy from day one and I was husky.
You mentioned if you weren't doing anything, you were sleeping.
Yeah, I was sleeping or prepping,
Did you recognize that sleep was a big part of it?
Oh, it was huge. I slept.
Did you get naps and stuff?
6 hours. I tried to sleep in one stint, but yeah, I took naps. I mean, of course, eating that much carbs, you can imagine you crash, right? So after training, I always tend to sleep, and I remember I was paid to do it, so it was a little easier. But I did have no issue sleeping whatsoever. A lot of people have these things where they can't sleep or they have to take sleep aids. That wasn't me. I can fall asleep anywhere.
When you become a professional bodybuilder, before you work your way to the top, is it enough money to where you don't need a lot of other outside money? Or you're mentioning having other businesses, you must have needed some other resources.
What's funny for me is like we talk about the upbringing and being in the family business. I was taught the value of $1 early on. So for me, it wasn't about like, okay, I knew I needed, like I was taught, okay, make enough money to survive, right? Pay your bills and save money, but don't be a pig, right? So what I did is, I learned along the way, like, hey, my whole goal wasn't to win the Olympia. It was actually to be financially stable. So I knew I was conservative and I learned, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to find ways that I can be a great business guy. And I created the branding. I created the merchandise. And, along the way, I listened to the right people. I had business advisors and people that taught me, okay, I invested in real estate like in the beginning. That was kind of my first venture. That's why I moved to Las Vegas after living in California. I actually bought a house 6 months after moving to Orange County, and I made a bunch of money on that. And then, of course, the 9/11 tragedy happened, and I went to Vegas on just a whim to visit a friend, and I saw the real estate market. Everything was discounted. Everyone was scared to spend money because they thought that the world was coming to an end. And I scooped up a bunch of stuff, and that's really when I started falling and making really serious money in bodybuilding. I won 6 shows in 2003, and with every win, I bought a house. So I had like 6 or 7 homes in 2003.
There's money. There's actual money that you win from the show, but then you probably also win money from endorsements, and along with the endorsements, you probably get more endorsement, right?
Of course, and there's a lot of revenue once you're good at it, right? And people always ask me, how do I get sponsored? I said, you got to win something. You got to be good, right? You got to be something that someone isn't. And nowadays, you know, with the internet, there's just a lot of, you know, Instagram, there's a lot of people that can showcase a lot of great talents, or it's perception, right? Maybe they're not as good. Everyone lives the most glamorous life on Instagram, right?
That's right.
But I lived that life. You know, I was actually, you know, the cars I drove and the houses I lived in and the places I went and traveled and whatever, that was all real shit. So, but that wasn't only from bodybuilding. It was investments that I did and getting into different ventures, and that's building the relationships and being a stand-up person that I was able to, you know, put myself in touch with the right people and have the right business advisors. But I truly believe it goes back again to how I was brought up. And I was taught values and, you know, showing people respect. But, you know, in the beginning, it was like, I never imagined I'd make money like I did. And then, of course, you're winning, you know, 100,000 at a time or 150,000 at a time. You're winning cars and everything else. And then the endorsements just start rolling in one after another. I mean, it becomes a really solid life. I mean, I was one of the fortunate ones to be able to do it at the highest level for a long time, still doing it nowadays. And, you know, I carry what I didn't expect, a whole brand now. You know, the Jay Cutler brand is really big. I'm still
probably worldwide, because bodybuilding's popular all over the world.
Yeah, and it's really cool to be able to see that in different cultures and, you know, to understand when you go over there. And I didn't travel a lot when I was actually competing because I was so booked in the United States every weekend to weekend at stores and guest appearances, charity events. There wasn't expos at that point. Like, the expos have become more apparent the last 5 years. But I was able to, you know, create, you know, that revenue from that. But also I was able to touch base with many more people. And once I started traveling overseas, it was like, wow, this is like a culture shock that bodybuilding's that big over there. You know, I would show up at places. I remember being in India and 3,000 people are in the common to come. I'm like, why are these people here? They said they're here to see you. And I was like, damn, like, you don't expect that shit. You know, you travel all the way. Who would have thought, you know, growing up where I grew up, 6,000 people in my town, I'd be somewhere in India and being like a household name there and being in front of 1 million fans, like literally. And it's kind of mind blowing, you know, and I still do it. And being who I am now, it's like, you know, I still show up at these events. I mean, my line was 4 hours in Houston this past weekend to see me. Can you imagine waiting 4 hours to meet anyone in line?
It's pretty wild.
I mean, I don't know if I would do that. And I tell these people that, so I try to give people a lot of time, and I try to listen.
You got to think about it this way too. Like, perspective is always key, in my opinion. And it sounded like you weren't a fan of what your dad made you do when you were young, because you didn't understand it maybe as much as you do now. But a lot of people don't even have that. They don't even have, like, your dad made you do that because he fucking cared, you know. And a lot of people just don't even have. They don't have a mom. They don't have a dad. They have alcoholic parents, or they've been abused, and they're waiting in line to see Jay Cutler because you pulled them through something. You mean a lot to that person, and that they don't give a fuck about how long it takes,
dude. And you know, and people are in tears and shit. You know,
it's wild, isn't it?
And you know, it changes your life. Like, you realize your worth after you become who I become, and you say, okay, what's next for me, right? There's always that question when you retire, like, fuck, what am I going to do, you know? How am I going to keep myself occupied? And what I've learned is, like, I need to give back to what created this opportunity for me, because there's one person out there. Listen, there's 13 Mr. Olympias, but there's going to be 13 more, probably more in my lifetime, right?
Right.
So it's like, because I don't think it's going to be like after this run, Phil has this run, I can't see a guy winning time and time and time. I say that, but I mean, I didn't expect Phil to do it either. But, like, man, like, it's just, you change people's lives. Like, that's not, when you start off training, like, you think, okay, I want to win titles, and, you know, and then eventually it turns into endorsements, and you talk about the prize money and shit like that. But, like, you can't imagine, like, when you're 18 and you're looking at these guys in the magazine and you're thinking, I'm not thinking other than, hey, I want to be that guy. I don't start thinking, oh, I want to be this person because I want to be a role model to, like, millions and millions of people.
Yeah, you're not thinking I want to be like Sylvester Stallone was to you. You're not thinking that way.
You don't think that because you're just a nobody, right?
Right.
I mean, let's be real. And then all of a sudden, like, the tables are turned. Here you are after achieving all the success, and, like, these kids are coming and like, you're my inspiration, you're my idol, you're this, you're that. And then you got 50
and they really mean it.
You got 50-year-old men that said, I followed you for 20 years. You know, they said, I remember the magazine where you were sitting there, your first picture in the magazine, and I'm like, holy shit, this guy's right, because I know when my first picture was. And, then you help me, you saved my life, or I lost I heard that all weekend. I lost 100 pounds, 150 pounds. You saved my life. Like this and that. And they're bringing their wives or their girlfriends who could give a shit, who like about fitness.
Yeah, they're always kind of sitting there frowny faced.
Well, no, they were like, dude, you're like, this guy you're all he talks about.
A lot of times, yeah, the guy himself can't even say anything.
Yeah. And
right?
I said, how excited was he to come here? And the wife or the girlfriend's like, oh my God, like he's talked about it for 4 months since he saw it advertised. I mean, that just made everything for me.
And it makes the 14-hour whatever flight that you had to get on, and the 2-hour drive, and the X, Y, and Z that you had to figure out how the fuck to get there.
It's just crazy, man. And like the opportunities just keep pouring at me, and like you realize like your worth is a lot more than you ever expected. Like, you start thinking, I mean, when you turn over 40, you're like, shit, your life's over. When you were like 25, thinking about, shit, what am I going to be at 40? Like, you look at 40-year-olds and you think, oh, that's so old. But once you get there, you're like, this ain't so bad,
Right. Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. Who knows? I mean, you could live an entire another half of your life that's just as busy, just as occupied. I mean, you don't really know. How did you avoid getting pulled in the wrong direction? Because you mentioned some of these sponsors coming in. There's a lot of people that are full of shit, especially like in...
Everyone's full of shit.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody. Everybody's full of shit, including you, Smokey. Everybody's full of shit. So how did you avoid... and it's probably happened to you. You probably have been pulled in the wrong direction. You probably do have a bad story or two, because it's bound to happen. All of us get so many people pulling on you after these Olympia victories, I would imagine.
Yeah, listen, the deals come at you. You got to weigh them all out. There's been some successes. There's been failures. Listen, I've done, I mean, you can talk about real estate deals where I made a ton of money, and some other monies I lost certain deals. But you have to kind of weigh it all out. That's all. I mean, fortunately for me, like, people may not believe this, but a lot of the stuff I get involved with, Endorsing especially, it was stuff that I used or I believed in. It goes way back. I mean,
people are always like, you're full of shit.
No, and you know what? I've been under contract with some of the best supplement companies. I was with Muscle Tech for 8 years, and people can talk shit about that company, but I used all the products, and they were awesome. Like, they treated me unbelievably, and, I was with ISS, which is the OYAC company. I learned a lot being with them 3 years. I was with Joe Weider, who, without Joe Weider, I wouldn't be who I am. I endorsed his products, and, we used to get truckloads. I mean, my house was like fucking GNC, And then, I finished up lastly with BPI Sports, who were my partner for Cutler Nutrition, and now I own 100% of my brand. So I'm solely on my own now, which just happened in the last month. And it's given me a great opportunity now to, really kind of rebrand and reformulate. And I'm going to launch a bunch of new products. And, I'm pursuing what I believe is like what I want to do. And I've had a lot of, deals that on the table didn't look so good, and then they kind of revisited and they fell on my lap again, and I had success with that. But everything is an opportunity, whether it's a winner or a loser. I mean, you build relationships. Some things don't work out. Listen, not everyone's going to be successful at what they do. You can look at me and saying, well, if I lost the Olympia, I finished second to last at the first one, why the hell did I go back to do it again? I mean, you got to go through learning curves, and failures are sometimes setting you up for the biggest advantages in life. And that goes back to the second place finishes at the Mr. Olympia. I mean, shit, if I didn't have those, I might not have worked so hard to get the first.
Yeah. We mentioned some of the training, but you mentioned to me at lunch that you worked out 4 times a day. I would imagine that's kind of like coming down the stretch. Is that for a month? Is that for 8 weeks? How long did you work out?
That was 16 weeks training for a competition.
Holy
I mean,
shit.
That's a long. That's
16
a long
weeks,
time.
Andrew, training 4 times a day.
Dude, no way.
two cardio sessions, 2 weight sessions. What a fucking boring life, huh?
It worked out.
Well, it worked out because I was winning most of those things. I mean, very rarely did I lose. I mean,
Do you have to be boring to be a bodybuilder in some way?
You know what, man? Like, I think you got to have a very simple mindset. You can't be social. You can't be out doing a lot of other activities. Some people argue this. Some people will be listening to this or watching this live and think, I go out and do, do things with my family and stuff. Yeah. I mean, listen, it depends on your mindset. My mindset is, as Mr. Olympia was like, when I trained for competitions, man, there was no world. I shut everything out. So you put on the blinders and you have tunnel vision on what that ultimate goal is. And I didn't want to go back after 16 and like 16 weeks and win or lose the title and say I should have done or could have done this. That's why I did it the way I did for that 16. But once the 16 weeks was over, man, I lived my life. I mean, listen, man, I partied, I went out, I did, I had, after I was married, I had girlfriends and, I hung out with friends. I became more social. I traveled all around the world and, I've been some of the best places. And I live in Vegas, man. I mean,
was it ever hard to get back to it when you did that? When you kind of
the only time it was hard is when I got divorced in 2011, and I tore my bicep that year, and my dog died, and whatever. It just it was
just a shit year.
Yeah, it was terrible, but and then I planned to come back in 12, but I had a bicep surgery, so it kind of sidelined me. It took a year for recovery for that. And then I came back in 13, and I kind of got my ass handed to me. I was, 6th, which was the worst placing in over 12 years. And I realized, holy shit, I thought I was at that level again, but I really wasn't fully back because I was traveling a lot. I was, I had a big tour bus. We were running with the supplement brand, and I was traveling all around on a tour bus. And, I thought I was getting enough meals, and I wasn't as dedicated. And that was probably, the biggest eye-opener for me. And listen, I partied in between that loss in 11 and after getting divorced and all that stuff, it was like you go through that phase, right? And then I had to get back down to business, and I just wasn't the same person, man. I didn't have my ex-wife was a huge backbone for me, and when she wasn't there day to day, it kind of affected me, so when
I think you mentioned at lunch you were with her for like 20 years.
Yeah, 23 years, man. Yeah. So it was like you had that structure, and I really didn't know. Sometimes, like, I thought I was doing the right thing, but it's a comfortability thing. Like when you're training for a show, everything has to be in sequence. And I think now looking back, I just was missing some of those moving parts. That's all.
How do you deal with comments? You're retired from getting on the stage, and I think you're what'd you say? You're 235 right now, something like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, you don't look nearly as big as you used to, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you deal with? Does that ever bother you? Does it ever bother you? Somebody's like, "Oh, you look smaller. You look nothing like you used to look." Or
nah, man, I got four Sandows on some pedestals at home and a lot of medals to prove it. You know, so for me.
Even if you get out of shape, someone's like, "Oh, you look fat." Does any of it bug you?
I haven't been out of shape much. So for me, it's like just smaller. Yes, I'm trying to downsize, and that's my goal. I mean, remember, it's me on me. I'm not trying to impress anyone. I still want to be fit. I want to look athletic. Like in the athletic.
I'm going to tell you right now, it ain't going to happen.
Athletic is a lot of opinions for a lot of people, right? But
you look like SpongeBob SquarePants. That's the physique.
Yeah. One of the questions that came in was actually like, what's your diet looking like these days that you are trying to slim down a little bit, or size down, I should say.
I mean, I have, I own a meal service, MegaFit meals, so I do a lot of that. But it's still the chicken and rice. Still eat the same breakfast, the egg whites and the oatmeal for breakfast, a couple whole eggs. Today I was a little steak for lunch, which I don't usually eat a lot of steak, to be honest. I've kind of cut red meat out of my diet most of the time. But I eat a lot less. I eat half as much as I used to. So I eat about 6 ounces of meat and probably like 40 grams of carbs per meal.
That probably feels a lot better, right?
Well, listen, I didn't feel too bad at 300 pounds, to be honest. I mean, I was pretty agile and I trained, and I mean, obviously visually it's much different, and the clothing fits a lot different, and the styles have changed since then. I used to wear big baggy clothes, 5X shirts and shit, it's just like, that's much more comfortable, and I'm not as hot all the time. That's for sure. When you're big and heavy
your
like
body
that,
temperature is through
yeah,
the roof.
you're red as shit. Everyone thinks you have high blood pressure, and I never had high blood pressure, but I sure looked like I did, that's for sure.
Was there, during your competitive years, were there things that you had to avoid? Like somebody might be, hey, let's go skiing, or let's go do this.
Well, the funny thing is I signed an agreement with Muscle Tech, back in 2003, and I was on the contract until 2012. And I had like no extreme sports in that contract. So I had ATVs I bought in 2005, and I was like, I grew up on the farm riding ATVs. That's what I love to do. And those suckers sat in my garage. Shit, I've probably ridden them probably 3 hours since I bought them, and I take them up and down the street every once in a while. I put on my social media, but that's about the extent that I go. I should start riding more, but you know, a lot of things I couldn't do. Downhill skiing I used to do a lot. I used to water ski. I mean, I'm not going to jump out of airplanes at this point or anything like that, man. I'm trying to do anything to salvage my life. You know what I mean? I worked my ass off to get where I am at. So, you know, I used to ride motorcycles all the time, but for me, like, it's just so damn dangerous now. But like the texting and shit, like, I'm afraid to ride a motorcycle. Like, I rode when no one was texting, and everyone, if you pull up to anyone next to a stoplight, everyone's texting, right?
It's fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
Smokey's on a motorcycle. He might get
yeah?
out. Watch out.
What
for
do you
those
ride?
texters.
A sport bike or a?
It's a low power.
Okay, that's all right. That's good. Yeah, I had Harleys. I had GSXRs. I just sold a Ducati. Actually, I had a Ducati, but it was more just a showpiece in my garage. Someone actually needed the money, so I actually bought it from them, and I thought I was actually going to ride it. I took it to the gym once, and it was like summertime in Vegas, and the shit was so hot, bro. It's like, fuck, I can't ride this thing on daily, you know. You have to wear a helmet in Vegas, you know.
Yeah.
I wanted to ride with no helmet on, but I was like kamikaze like that. I didn't give a shit, you know.
What was the coolest thing that ever happened to you in bodybuilding, whether it be something that you won or something that happened, you know, due to circumstances of you bodybuilding, competing?
Oh man, like, you know, I told you guys at lunch that story, like Stallone, you know, he was my idol. And, you know, to meet him, I met him and Van Damme, Jean-Claude Van Damme, you know, watching Bloodsport all those years. And those two guys were like the reason I got in, and I was able to meet those guys, and they both said the same exact thing to me. They told me they were fans. So for me, that's like mind blown, like crazy, because like those are your two idols. And, you know, I met Arnold, and I mean, he was like, obviously won the Arnold Classic a bunch of times, and, you know, talking to him is pretty wild considering I was watching him in Commando and all that shit. And, you know, I visited some of the craziest places. I mean, I've been in Peru, and, you know, to visit these orphanages with kids and be able to bring them gifts and all that. I mean, bodybuilding's taken me all around the world, and I never would have been able to probably do that, nor wanted to, if it wasn't for bodybuilding, because when I retire, I'm not going to travel much, because I've flown millions of airplane miles. I mean, by the beginning from January this year until March, I already have flown 100,000 miles.
Holy shit.
So I'm still traveling a tremendous amount, and I'm so sick of fucking planes. You can imagine, like, you know what I mean. And I'm just sick of rude people and and just
the whole thing,
just the airports and the delays, and like that's what ruins it for me. Like if you said, Jay, if you could go anywhere in the world, if I could just like zoom myself there and get there and like Lightspeed, I would go anywhere on the planet. But
you're talking about teleportation,
yeah,
my friend.
the travel time, it's like it's unreal, man. Like I can't take the flights anymore. It just kills me, because if you think about it, that's the worst waste of your life you could ever do, is sitting on an airplane. You know,
it's a killer, and even just to get on the plane, you know, just the whole act, the whole thing is a big pain.
And it's like you can only watch so many movies over and over. I mean, I like to watch Narcos. Like that's one of my favorite shows, and I'm watching Billions right now. That's like the show I like to watch. So those are two.
You got to get into Cobra Kai.
What's
Cobra Kai?
I've heard of it.
Good.
It's on YouTube.
Oh yeah,
we haven't really talked about it much on the podcast.
It's fucking fantastic.
Yeah, it's weird how Danny LaRusso is kind of like a Danny little bitch, though, right?
Yeah, you know, he might be turning into.
Well,
a heel.
he was in the
he always was.
Original Karate Kid, he was kind of like a little pansy, wasn't he?
Yeah, but in this one, you're kind of almost rooting
pansy.
Like,
that's
you're rooting for like the bad guy. It seems like.
Well, I was rooting for the bad guys even in the original.
Oh, dude, then this one's right up your alley. This one's it's dope.
It's really good.
Yeah,
it actually is really good. Like the first, you know, it has definitely like a cheese ball factor to it, but it actually, in my opinion, actually turns really good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it follows the bad guy whose name I can't even think of right now. For like the first 15 minutes of the first episode.
Johnny.
Yeah, Johnny,
yeah.
the kid with the blonde hair, played him in the original.
Yeah, it's the same guy.
No, it isn't. Is it really?
Is?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's the same guy.
Let me pull up a.
It's all the same people.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Really? You got to see it.
So how far along is this series?
Just episode. They're just one year, right?
Yeah. So it's done through season 1, but they got green lighted for season 2.
Woohoo!
Okay. So it's free on YouTube.
YouTube Red.
It's on YouTube Red.
Yeah.
So you have to like buy YouTube.
There's a slight paywall, but but
what's it? $12, $15?
I think it's like $10 a month.
Yeah, you don't get any commercials and all that shit. You get. YouTube's trying to do a bunch of shit. I saw them advertising YouTube TV and stuff. I don't know what's going on.
So you're plugging this thing then?
Yeah, that's right.
That means it's really
this is a paid. This is a paid advertisement right here.
Okay.
But
250K they gave us.
he's eating fried bologna.
So
times have been tough on Johnny.
so this is like him at 40. Oh, he's
Right.
yeah. He's
Yeah.
up. That's him for real.
Yeah.
Yep, that's him.
Look
Damn.
what he's watching.
Dude, you're missing out on a lot of good stuff.
Dude, I'm gonna have to.
And
go.
you thought you had nothing left to watch on planes.
Shit, I'm gonna go home and watch this shit tonight.
so good.
You know?
It is really good. And if you hate it, you can blame Andrew.
Yeah, that's fine.
Andrew, what kind of questions you got building up over there, buddy?
I got one that I just stumbled upon. I wanted to get your guys' opinion on it. Miss America eliminates swimsuit competition in the judging, and they say that there won't. Let's see, what is it? They will no longer judge contestants on their physical appearance.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I don't know
What are they going to be judged on?
That's what I'm wondering. I have no idea.
You know what? So you're asking my opinion on this?
Yeah, because
Listen, I love a chick in a swimsuit, but not the skinny girls. I'm not into skinny chicks. Like I like Latinas.
You like chicks that lift,
me
or
too.
it doesn't really matter?
No, I don't like a chick. I don't like a chick that has to eat every 2 hours. It's too much effort. Too much effort.
Their watch goes off the same time as yours does.
Well,
and you both
now,
have to
now
eat
with
the
this
same time.
with this Apple Watch shit, it's like
Right.
too much. But no, I was never into fitness bodies. I mean, they look good, but it wasn't something that I wanted to marry. That's for sure.
Right. Maybe someone who's just health conscious, but not training their face off. Right.
I think, listen, I think a bikini girl, especially with the cuts the bikinis have nowadays. I mean, like, it's good to look at those girls in bikinis.
What about the CrossFit chicks? They got kind of the thicker legs and
I
some powerlifting girls.
I like a little thick chick, I like them thick bodies.
A little bit round and big.
Yeah, I mean, not to be like too
We
in
can
detail,
be gross.
but
Yeah, we can be gross.
I like a little thickness. I'm not like a skinny type
Right.
girl thing. I like a little meat there, which has kind of changed. I mean, in the beginning, I liked skinnier girls.
Yeah, your opinions change over the years, right? Your
taste changed.
your taste buds.
Yeah.
Taste buds. There you go. Yeah.
Hey now.
What were the purses like when you were competing versus now? Like, is there like such a
It changed a lot.
yeah.
Not really.
The Miss Olympia. I mean, I won 200 at my best, and it's 400. So yes, that's changed. But to be honest, like the smaller shows still pay the same money, like 10, 15 grand each show. So if you win a few, I mean, you pick up some money, but it's pretty costly to train for these things. I mean, your food bill alone. I mean, I can tell you, I probably spent on some years 100 grand, but that includes eating out and stuff too, just on food.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have a revenue stream in order to do it at the level that we do it at, where it's attainable.
Is bodybuilding, in your opinion, in jeopardy in some way? Like if I don't even know how it works anymore, but like when you become a pro, who's paying?
It doesn't the pro card doesn't guarantee a salary. I mean, it's not a union base.
Did it used to?
No.
And it was mainly Joe Weider.
Yeah, he gifted everyone. You know what I mean? Like
And the guy at Gold's Gym,
Ed Connors.
Ed Connors,
he brought
right?
me to. He's the one that brought me back to. After when I went out there, I mentioned at 19, I won that.
He had a house that John Cena has lived
stayed
at.
there, yeah.
Jay Cutler. I mean, the list of people.
He introduced me to Cena because Cena worked the front desk at Gold's then, and he was like, yeah. But Cena was like great, man. He was awesome when I met him because we were from Massachusetts, and he was natural guy, and he was like crazy, like the physique on him.
Fucking big.
Yeah, like big arms.
I mean, he still is big, but yeah.
And he used to ride his motorcycle around and stuff, so it was really cool, like that he made it like to the big time. And
his story is like very similar to yours.
Yeah.
Although I think he won 5 Mr. Olympias, not 4, and he lost 5 times.
I think he got on a little higher platform than me, but it's just funny how these guys like are so.
Dude, you could take him out.
So quiet, and then like it's just like that personality comes out, and he's like a showman. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
I got to see him. Like he came to Vegas like a few years ago, and I actually went went backstage and caught up to him. We sat on the bus and had a beer and stuff. It was pretty cool to see him.
He's a fucking stud. He's a workhorse.
Yeah,
he's a goddamn workhorse.
How close were you to Rich Piana?
You know what? We were friends.
Yeah.
Like we were friends. I knew Rich before he was like really famous.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing a lot of commercials, and it's unfortunate for him because he had such a huge like presence in bodybuilding, and he was a really positive influence. Even though his like his visually, he was like kind of scary to a lot of people.
Yeah.
With all the tats and like the whole 5% thing. But he like really put himself at another level than everyone else. And what he spoke about was just raw and real. And, you know, it was just unfortunate when he passed away because like we spent a lot of time at expos. I would see him around and I knew a lot of people that were friendly with him. And, you know, he was always polite to me and like we'd always converse when we saw each other. We spent time, we trained together and ate together. But we weren't best friends, but he was one of the people that definitely for me was kind of a person of interest of the fitness community. You know, people really respected him and what he brought to the table.
Yeah.
You mentioned Craig Titus earlier. I know a lot of the people that watch this show probably don't have any clue on who that is. Did you know Craig Titus?
I knew him well.
And then did he kill his girlfriend or something? I can't even remember.
He
what
killed
happened.
the assistant and burned her in the car, if you remember.
And then did he kill himself or something?
No, he's in jail.
Oh, he's in jail.
The wife got out, you know, ex-wife now, but she
Right.
went to jail too. They both were conspired supposedly to kill.
A wild story.
And they burned it in the body. There was a movie about it and all that. But he was in Vegas. He lived there. I used to see him at the gym. I helped him train for a couple of shows, actually. Probably some of the better looks he ever produced on the stage. And he was a hustler, man. He always was grinding, and you know he did very well he wasn't a huge success on the stage, but off stage he made a lot of money doing appearances and marketing.
Yeah, he was really
himself.
popular.
And he was
really
a good-looking dude, and he had a lot of magazine covers, but his just lifestyle was so crazy and wild, like chicks and drugs and partying, and like he was kind of like the bad boy of bodybuilding, but it kind of caught up to him, I think, you know, and I know he wasn't in any normal state of mind when that happened. Let's put it that way.
Right. Who are some of your favorite bodybuilders? I guess let's start out with kind of old school. Who are some of your favorites from the past? And then also who are some of your favorites that are more current?
I mean, Samir Bannout was awesome. I mean, obviously, like Chris Dickerson, I mentioned Bob Paris, Lee Haney, Dorian Yates, you know, Arnold, of course, is up there. Sergio Oliva was way ahead of his time.
Yeah.
I mean, Robbie Robinson, those guys were like, back in that day, were just crazy. Lou Ferrigno was just
Robbie Robinson is still jacked.
Dude, he's 72 or something, and he's still guest posing and shit. It's crazy.
And then when he talks, like he very rarely talks, but if he does talk, he sounds like fucking Darth Vader.
Yeah.
That's kind of scary. Like,
but
holy
he's
shit.
still ripped. I don't know if
He's
you
still
saw,
ripped.
he guest posed at the Emerald Cup this year at 72, and he's still like crazy for that age.
It's fucking insane.
But Lee Haney, Dorian Yates, those were kind of like my idols. I liked Lee Labrada. I think Rich Gaspari was a guy that I kind of looked at too.
Lee Haney had the small waist.
Yeah, he had I mean, he was crazy at that.
That's now?
That's now, bro.
That's Robbie Robinson
that's
now?
him at 70.
Isn't that crazy?
Dude.
I mean, look at the condition still, and
he's at Gold's Gym all the time.
every day, but you'd never know that's what's underneath his body. 'Cause
No.
he wears really baggy clothes.
Yeah, he's got tons of like sweatpants.
He
on.
trains with Mike O'Hearn a lot.
Yeah, and he doesn't say anything.
Yeah, he doesn't. I've never spoken to Robbie Robinson in my life.
Yeah, he doesn't.
Ever. Yeah.
Who's the
He
guy
just-
that wears the mask all the time at Gold's?
That's probably him.
Is it?
Yeah, because he has like a sweatshirt on, and then he's got something kind of over his face, and he just kind of like,
Looks like a ninja.
yeah, that's him. That's Robbie Robinson.
Holy shit.
He's
Yeah,
just
so
this whole
he's back
time.
in like Arnold's era, and he was a big figurehead back then. I mean, that was part of the golden era, they call it.
Yeah,
Dude, there's so many great bodybuilders. I mean, Mike Matarazzo was one of my favorites. He passed away. Paul DeMeo was like with Quadzilla. He was like my guy.
you mentioned that you had a pretty big squat when you were a teenager. What's your best squat?
700.
Holy shit,
Yeah, 700 at 19.
that's fucking crazy.
I
Were
was
you like really?
I was stupid then.
Were you really training for strength often, like trying just to go as
It was
heavy as
I
you
was
could?
an ego lifter then, so I would go in the gym and like every week I'd try to break records because that was like the cool thing to do in Gold's Gym Worcester. But for me, it was like, I didn't think like, okay, I'm gonna someday be Mr. Olympia. But then when I won the teen nationals at 19, I realized that I can't fuck around anymore. I just gotta stop doing all this heavy shit, you know.
Did you lift angry back then? Like a lot of kids, like they go to the gym and they're kind of like got a chip on their shoulder. They would,
I didn't lift angry because that wasn't my demeanor. I never get mad. But I think aggressively I was going at it, meaning I told Smokey that I used to squat till my nose bled. And I thought that was cool. That's the fucked up thing, And, I said, listen,
That
if
is cool.
you're not,
It's very cool.
well, you think it's in this fucking gym, it's probably cool as hell, but it's not very impressive when you're
it's not
at
smart.
Lifetime Fitness now,
Yeah,
The mirrors aren't covered with guys spit and snots all over them,
Right.
But if the thing is, I used to get hemorrhoids when I squatted a lot.
Holy shit.
Did you ever have hemorrhoids
Oh
from
yeah.
squatting?
It's brutal.
Yeah, I had it lanced.
I had a situation where I can't even remember what I was doing, probably a squat or a deadlift, and I just like stopped what I was doing, and I was like, I'm out, and like I think everybody thought I was kidding, and I was like, I think I blew my butthole out,
Really?
and I just left, and like I had to take a couple days off, and everything was fine after that.
Can I ask you a question?
It was terrible.
There was something on the internet where a guy's intestines supposedly came out. Was that a real thing?
I don't know if anybody knows
During a squat?
I don't know if anybody knows if that was real or not, but that sounds.
Did you ever
crazy.
see
The
it?
cool thing about Google,
You got to be able to flex your, what is that called?
taint.
Yeah, I guess so.
But I had to get
whatever that P muscle
I
is.
just remember that was the shittiest part of my career was like, having to get my shit lanced. They had to cut them because it's hard to get rid of them, right?
And you still used a lot of barbell exercises throughout your bodybuilding career, right?
Yeah, I was a full meathead, to be honest.
Yeah, and you did a lot of traditional barbell squats. You weren't like necessarily using a machine.
And I still barbell squat. I only go up to like 185 or 200 now, which is nothing, right? I do it 12 times, but I just do it to stimulate. My legs are still actually pretty good sized and conditioned for not really training them that much. Like it's telling you guys, like I didn't train them for 3 years before I turned pro because my legs were just too damn big. I needed to build my upper body.
How many sets and reps were you doing when you were in your prime? What did that look like?
Shit, between quads and hamstrings, 40 sets. I would do 20 to 25 just for quads. I do everything, back squats, front squats, leg presses, hack squats, lunges, leg extensions.
These are real sets, or is it including warm-up?
No, this is real sets.
Yeah.
Warm-ups was only the first set for two sets, and then it was like full on after that.
Stretch or anything, or warm up beforehand?
No, I just went right into it. But for me, I just love to train. Like that's what separated me from like most guys. Is I just look forward every day to go in the gym and smash it up. So like I would have the best gyms in the world in Vegas. I don't know how many times you've been to Vegas. Like when the Gold's Gyms existed, there was this Gold's Gym, Flamingo Sandhill. It was awesome. Like it was like Disneyland for bodybuilders.
Yeah.
It was a fucking huge gym, and they had a lot of old school stuff there, and they had the power racks and shit there. So like a lot of power lifters were there, and it was just a good atmosphere. Even though I was never really into powerlifting, like it wasn't what I started off doing, I loved it because I loved being around that vibe.
Yeah, the energy.
Because those guys, powerlifters, like to me, like my perception is like the guys don't make a lot of money. It's like a weekend thing. They get together. They get like a bunch of guys just. They chalk up and they put their suits on or whatever, or wrap themselves up, but they take like 2 hours between each set, like while each one of them goes and sees what their max are. So they're in the gym like hours. Like that's a passion to what you do. So it was a cool vibe to always be around that because I was just, around them training and to walk by that area, and they watched me like kill it with repetitions. And even though like I wasn't doing what they did, they respected it because I was the best at what I did.
Right.
And they watch me train and shake their head and say, man, I can't believe, you're doing that for that many repetitions. Because I did train heavy, not like Coleman, but I was able to sling a lot of weight. I mean, I still pressed, I remember the flex photo shoot, like, I'd go in there and I'd do 5 plates and I'd sit on the floor with it, while he took the pictures and come back up. And he's like, no one does this shit. I mean, they had 200-pound dumbbells that I would press. I pressed at 23. It's like, there's only one other guy that's done this. Actually, Flex Wheeler was the only one that did it for him. But I thought, like, that was really fucking stupid then because, like, I had just came off a show and I'm, like, pressing. That's not something. Yeah, I mean, I think about it now and it's like my whole career could have been over. Pec tears are, like, career ending for bodybuilders a lot of times. So sometimes the ego did get in the way a little bit, but, fortunately I was able to step away and not be injured that knocked me out except for that
What
bicep.
what the intensity look like on these sets? You know, how, like, was it like all out? Was it to failure?
No, I never did failure, but what I did is I focused on 10 to 12 repetitions, but what I like to do is my rest time was very short, so I only rested 45 to 60 seconds. So basically, if I was training with one partner, the partner would go and I would go, and I would always train with people that didn't have to change the weights, so they had to be the same strength. And if they did train with me, it was a privilege to train with me. I was kind of a dick like that, where people would be like, "Hey, I want to be a training partner." I said, "Well, I'm not changing weights. I'm not spotting you." Because the problem is when I was training, like I would sweat like crazy. I mean, I was 300 pounds, and it was, I like training when it was hot. So I would sweat, and I would drip all over people if I was spotting them, especially doing chest and that kind of shit. So I didn't want to touch people, and I didn't want them touching me. So I never had spotters. That's why I never trained to failure. But the rest time was super crucial for me. So 45 to 60 seconds between each set, which was I was still winded. But remember, my goal wasn't weight challenges. It was always for the pump. And I felt that I think intensity thrives on how quick you move through and how much intensity. Like, if your mind stays continuous, like with set after set after set, that's what makes you better. And I think that's what was important, was the rest time in between. Whereas a powerlifter might take 5 minutes. I don't know what you would take between each set.
Yeah.
But your whole goal was to push the weight.
Right.
My goal was to get pumped up and create as much muscle fullness as I could, and then get out of the gym and feed it, right?
It's a much safer route in some sense, because you're getting fatigued throughout the sets, and even though you're not necessarily going to failure, things are starting to get tough after you did 3 sets or 4 sets, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's my ex-wife, actually. She was one of the better training partners I had.
How many sets would you do on a given exercise? 4 or 5?
I would do 3 to 4 working sets.
And would they normally be with like kind of the same weight, or light, medium, heavy type of thing? Or
I would always start off with, I would pyramid up each set. But remember, as I got stronger, I mean, when I did dumbbell work, or with barbells, I only trained with barbells so much. I mean, I stopped bench pressing because I realized how dangerous it was. The dumbbells only went so high. So I got to a point where I could do 180s, 12, 15 times pretty easily. Even for shoulder presses, I used to shoulder press 160s for 12 repetitions.
Shit. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of weight. And so it just depends on what body part you worked on, how many sets you did for like biceps, triceps.
Oh yeah, because like bis and tris, like I still stand with the same weights that I did when I was competing. I mean, arms, you don't have to train that heavy. It's all about repetitions and volume. I mean, if you go back to the Arnold days and you watch those guys train, I mean, they would spend 3 hours in the gym, and they didn't know the nutrition. That's why they didn't get bigger. Probably overtrained themselves, but they loved doing it. That's why they were there.
Right.
And they were, when Arnold was winning $500 at the Mr. Olympia. I don't know if people know that. I mean, Arnold won one of those 7 by himself. There was no one in the competition because 2 guys got disqualified. So, like, those titles to me, like, you're not in the competition like you have nowadays where the guys are, like, competing with the top 20 in the world or whatever.
Right.
Like, it's a whole nother animal, but we're also getting paid by endorsement deals that Arnold and them didn't have. They were laying bricks and, drinking milk and shit while they were getting ready for the show. So it was very difficult for them to make a living at it, and the prize money was shit. But that just proves, like, that was the passion of the golden era of bodybuilding, is like they didn't care about the money. They did it because they loved to train. I mean, really, if you wonder what Arnold's end goal was, I mean, he says he wanted to be a movie guy, but definitely wasn't like, oh, I want to be a 10-time Mr. Olympia because I want to win $5,000 over 10 years.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, so, and truthfully, I never thought about the money, to be honest. Like, the money wasn't like, when I got that check the 2 weeks after winning the show, I was like, damn, this is a great extra to win in the title.
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought after the show, like, oh, I want to win. For me, it was the same shit. I love to train. Like, that was the fun part. And the Olympia stage was just a place where I could put my talent and just say, okay, I'm going to put it on the line. And like I told you, I didn't give a shit whether I placed first, sixth, whatever. Of course, I got into it once I started winning. You don't want to go backwards, but I just was like, okay, let me just go showcase so I can go back to training and doing what I do and fulfilling the sponsors and living the best life I could.
How long these workouts take?
These are like 2-hour workouts, man. I spent a lot of time in the gym. I would say that I somewhat overtrained. I mean, I loved being in the gym. Like, what can I
Right.
tell you? It wasn't like, oh, well, I had to or whatever. It was like I had a choice to be there either 15 minutes or 3 hours, and I kind of went in between.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's true with a lot of us. But you got to get yourself out of the gym to recover too, right? You got to get yourself some food and so on, right?
I mean, yeah, you have to do all those things. But look at your life here. Look at your setup here. You live in a gym,
Right.
I mean, this is what you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah,
you're gonna die like a hardcore bodybuilder guy,
that's
like
right.
power lifter, whatever.
Yeah.
Someone that's around it all the time. Like that's all I cared about. Like that was being in the gym for that amount of day. Training 4 times, like that blows people's minds. But shit, it's like a great life for me at that point.
Yeah, it just seemed like you have a focus that's just on a whole nother level than what whole nother level
Thank you.
than what most people would be able to handle. And I think that's again back to why people want to wait 4 hours, why people want to see you at seminars, why we really appreciate having you here today, especially because you don't normally do podcasts. A lot of that is because of the dedication. I think a lot of people scratch their head and are like, "Fuck, man, how was he able to do that?"
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I just thought about that as we're talking about this. I think it didn't interest me before to talk about it like I do now because at some point you have to realize, okay, I'm not getting back on stage, and what's the next era of my life? And I've told you I've come to a realization after hearing all the stories that people that come to me at these expos and tell me like what changed their lives and if I had influence on that. So I realized the importance of me actually getting out there and speaking more and being an introvert, like someone that's like, it's not really my thing to sit there and talk about what I've succeeded at and what other people didn't. I think it's now time for me to voice what I have to say and really kind of get people on the same page as what drove me and what continues to drive me and what it's like in the mindset of how to become who I became. Because there's a next person, there's a lot of next people that are going to get to that level and they're going to achieve something not necessarily on a Mr. Olympia stage, but later in life and other things. And I think that's kind of where I'm going to kind of leave it at with, why I continue to do what I do is because, I'm trying to just showcase a talent that was started as a hobby and it was a passion, but it became a bigger and better thing.
We mentioned some of the cool things that have happened. What's the worst thing that have happened? I know that you kind of said you don't have any regrets, but along with winning 4 Mr. Olympia titles and all that time in the gym, what's the worst thing that got sacrificed, do you think?
My relationships with my family. I think, my family's in Massachusetts and I'm on the West Coast. It's hard for me to get home. And, my parents are getting older every day. And, we can talk about the things that matter to us most in life. And really, as you get older, and I think, you realize this too, as family comes first, right?
Absolutely.
And I talked about, like, they were so supportive, like, later, in the beginning, they didn't understand it. But, my brothers and sisters, they all came to my shows. Like, when I won all
That's
my Arnolds,
awesome. That's really
like,
cool.
they took a big van down and they'd come watch me compete. And it was kind of like the hillbillies coming to the Arnold because they're like country people. My brothers hunt and
They didn't know what the fuck
fish.
was going on.
Well, people like, they're your brothers, like, they don't, you know what I mean? They come with their concrete,
They
like,
think they're all
stained
gonna be
clothes
tan.
and shit.
Right.
Yeah, they don't realize, like, they think, oh, Jay Cutler lives this, like, lifestyle and, his family, he must come from this kind of background. But fuck, they're just like country people,
Right.
So they were like there cheering, and they were in my cheering section. My dad and my mom came to all my Olympias. My mom was right there she was there at the T Nationals, like under a tree painting me, like in between the prejudging and the finals.
How cool.
So like being able to spend time with them is crucial to me. And seeing my brothers and, their kids are all grown up now. They all had children. I don't have any children because I had enough nieces and nephews. I was an uncle when I was 9 years old. And, it's just really cool to be able to now to spend time with them and be able to eat my mom's cookies and like the stuff that I couldn't eat before and like the normal dinners and, have a drink with my brothers or whatever.
I can't come home for Thanksgiving. I can't come home for Christmas.
Yeah.
Right? You couldn't do it, right?
No, I could. I mean, I did, but it was like I was on my like
Whipping
Tupperware
out
shit,
Tupperware, yeah.
And now it's like I'm eating everything and I'm spending time and like it means a lot more to me.
Right.
And that's kind of transition of life, right? My mindset isn't like on the go button all the time. And I think that's the best way to explain. Like that was what my life was like. It was like go full fucking throttle every day. And now it's like it's kind of more laid back. I mean, you said at lunch you mentioned something about your mindset can't be that way. It's like I'm so laid back like with everything. I don't get angry. I get of course frustrated and sometimes stressed out, but not to the point where if it's not life altering, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Like too many people take things like way too personal and they think, oh my goodness, this is going to happen. And like, I'm like, fuck that. Like it's okay. Like it's not life altering.
Yeah. That's like when I got the email. I don't know what I did with my email. I think I hit like a weird button.
You canceled the
and
shit.
I canceled today's show somehow. And I just looked at it for a second. I was like, that's odd. I'll get back to that later. He must be pissed. And then so he texted me and he's like, are we still on? And I said, yeah, everything's fine. He's like, well, you canceled the calendar date. And I was like, I thought you did that.
Just pushing the blame.
I said, this motherfucker. Yeah, you can't do this, because I didn't get to come last time I was up here because this big party in Vegas.
Threw his phone out the window.
It's like, dude, I'm already here. What the fuck?
Yeah. So I was looking forward to it, coming up for the day and knocking this thing out. And I mean, I can't wait to come up for one of your events because I hear such great things about them. I mean, that's the thing with the networks. Like, people, it's your passion, bro. Like, that's why I respect it. And that's why I wanted to be part of this thing. And coming and seeing, I mean, I saw your staff at the Arnold. I came to your event shortly, which was a fucking zoo. But it was so cool, man.
Yeah, wasn't that crazy?
And
so sweaty.
And I realized, but I said, you know what? I want to be part of this guy's whole thing. It's just like a movement,
Right.
And I think, as like I said, as I get older, like my time is like, okay, I want to be on someone else's, like part of someone else's success too. And I think that's why, like, I was excited to come up here and kind of, talk to you guys and hang out. And I see your staff. Like, I saw everyone at the airport when I showed up there. And we've been trying to make this happen for a long time, which is cool.
Yeah, it's a goal of ours, when you don't get, I mean, luckily for you, you were a very high level bodybuilder, so you experienced some things, but definitely not in powerlifting and just in life in general. I think we're sometimes like underappreciated, and that's all people want. People just want to feel substantial. They want to feel good. So when we have people come here, second you walk through the door, my staff is going to flock to you. We're going to say, you need water, you need food. Like we'll probably almost be like on you too much and bother you too much. But it's all part of just trying to make people feel good. Like we really admire, when people have the drive and the focus and determination to put in all those hours in the gym. Like it deserves a reward. And that's kind of why I asked you the question about Joe Weider. It's like, man, without people like that around, it's like, what the fuck's going to happen to some of these? What's going to happen to bodybuilding?
Well, that's the thing. Like you just nailed it. And I don't know, you obviously know something that a lot of people don't. But when Joe Weider passed away, man, like that's where bodybuilding kind of started to fade. Because when you have someone that's passionate to help the guys to achieve like their best, and I remember Joe telling me, it's like, I'll never put a bad picture of you in a magazine. And the problem with social media, you asked me like the good and bad things about the internet. Pictures leak on the internet that shouldn't be there,
Right.
and that's the thing with the magazines. They made us all to be like superstars, and they only had the best pictures. Like they went through the slides and said, okay, this one's good, this one's bad, and he showcased the best. He showed everyone's strong points and made you look the best and touched up and whatever. But the internet doesn't allow us to do that, or social media. So it's like this, and I'll make the example is like you have this person that you hear about, and they become kind of like an idol or whatever. And then you get on, you listen to their media, and they start speaking. You're like, wow, wait a minute. I'm not sure if I like this guy like I liked it visually, right? Because they start talking. Or on the other end,
Right.
maybe you don't like him so much, but then once they start talking, you're like, damn, like I really like this guy. I like his passion and whatever he's, what he's out to say. I think that's really what, where it can be a good and bad thing. It's like a double-edged sword, So given the voice, like that's why every time I put content out, like I'm real, like it's me. But at the same time, it's like, I don't give a shit if you like me or you don't, because I just know like my journey is for me, and I'm not really trying to do it for anyone else. I'm not going to copy anyone. I kind of set like the standard to what my career was. And I'm going to continue to do that. And either you have the vision that I have and you follow it or you don't. There's always the next guy to go to. So everyone's going to have their idols or people they follow or admire or people they respect or don't respect. And that's every person's, choice, what they decide to really pursue.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate. I mean, you didn't have to give us your old posing trunks that you never washed, but I appreciate it.
Did you steal those out of my bag?
I think Smokey did with his teeth. He was sniffing around in there like a dog.
Yeah.
You got any more questions?
Yeah. So what's your breakfast like right now?
20 egg whites, 2 whole eggs, 2 slices of Ezekiel bread, 2 packets of oatmeal.
You ever try to eat
coffee.
20 egg whites?
I used to eat 30.
Oh my God.
So
you cut way back.
So with eating 30, is there any crazy poop stories with eating all this food?
All that oatmeal too. Damn.
We were talking about this earlier, I think. I had I was training for what show was it? I think it was the 06 Olympia. No, 09. Was it 09? No, I mean it might have been 06, and I was eating a ton of I was eating this Ezekiel cereal. It's like a flourless cereal bread. It's like a big thing you buy at Whole Foods or Trader Joe's.
A lot of fiber.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it got irritated my intestines and shit. So I ended up shitting a lot, And I mean, as a bodybuilder, you take a lot of dumps, I'm sure you live on the shitter, So I'm in the gym training back that day, and I'm like, damn, my fucking stomach's killing me, and I'm like, I gotta go home and I gotta shit, It was 2 p.m, so I already eaten 3 times, and I think I already had 3 meals of the Ezekiel. So I remember I was on the phone with my wife at the time, and I'm like, damn, my stomach's, I have to leave the gym. And I was pulling out. I remember exactly where it was. I was at the cross street of Lake Mead in Buffalo. I was in my silver Mercedes, right? And I got to the light, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't hold this any longer. And literally, I shit myself. And I swear to God, it raised me in the seat because I shit like a fucking like a donkey back then. You know what I mean? I was 300 pounds, and I'm when I got home, I'm I was screaming to my wife. I'm I was afraid to get up because I didn't want it to leak. Dude, I was driving my dream Mercedes.
Yeah, you had to roll out of it.
Yeah, and I'm fuck, this feels so terrible. And I'm not Smokey. You shit yourself every fucking week or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's I was damn, this is fucked up. I'm a grown man and I'm shitting myself after the gym, It's funny because one time I was walking the dogs too, and the same thing. I was going through the same issue, and I was walking the dogs, and for some reason they had an outhouse because they were doing construction in my neighborhood. Oh, no. Thank God they had the outhouse because I had a shit so bad. And I remember I had to run in, and I had the dogs on leashes, and I had big air. One was 100 pounds. So the dogs were on the leashes, and I was shitting on the thing, and the dogs were outside the outhouse, the door.
Could you imagine how good that would be to see that? Oh my God, that's Jay Cutler, and you're oh.
So I was sitting and taking a dump in the outhouse, and the dogs, I had them on the leash holding them. It was crazy, but man, that's
raised you up out of your seat.
You know what's funny? When I used to do seminars, people would ask me the craziest shit, and I remember one kid must have had over 100 people, 150 people at this seminar. And it's all right, anyone have any questions? First question, the guy says, how many times do you take a shit each day? And I'm and there's parents there and shit, you know what I mean? We're on, it's your podcast, so this is just normal shit. But I was so fucking embarrassed. What am I supposed to say?
Right.
I mean,
anywhere between 15 and 40.
You know what drives me crazy too is Ed Connors, okay, the guy who used to house.
Yeah. He
tells all these young kids now, Jay used more toilet paper than anyone I ever had.
That's awesome.
And I'm what the fuck? Why would you? And that's not true.
He's got to spend all his money on the toilet paper.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just hey, that's one of the downsides of bodybuilding was you have to get used to living on the toilet,
Well, if you're going to eat, then you're going to poop, right? It's
I know, but
mathematics.
It's honestly, that's the most time I look at Instagram is when I'm taking a dump, So
that's when you get your scroll on.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Just after that story, dude, I was a fan. You're a hero now. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, hero status. How'd you clean that? I mean, how'd you clean that up?
Yeah.
It must have been a mess.
I threw the pants out. I remember they
That was it.
were gray pants.
Oh, so they were
Oh.
just toast.
Oh, they were soaking
you
wet.
poop on the
Just-
seat?
Oh yeah, the seats had to be
Yeah.
cleaned and everything. I mean, it
Oh.
ran through.
Yeah,
You would
it
have
might
loved Smokey. You would have loved it, bro.
It might have looked like that scene in Pulp Fiction.
I probably could have sold those pants
That's
on
true.
eBay.
And Smokey would have bought them.
These, you know what? It's
Some
crazy.
freak in Germany.
No, you know what? Guys used to send me bags to sell them sweaty shirts.
Oh, that's great. That was to send them back. Yeah,
Yeah, like they used to people used to ask me for pictures of my feet, like crazy
that was us.
shit.
That was super training.
You talk about those fucked up stories, man. Like it's just like the letters I used to get, you know.
Some of the stuff that came in, like when you were, new to it, when you're new to like being famous in the fitness industry, were you sometimes like, what? Like somebody wanted to pay you like, I don't know, 50 grand to come just show up and pose or something, or
Yeah, you get a lot of offers.
were you
know?
just like, what the hell? Like that? They just want to see me like flex, like, and they want to give me this money.
As a
and pay?
young kid, you're kind of like taken back by that whole thing, like you didn't realize what it was, and you meet people and like you hear these offers, and it's just like, man, like is this what I'm getting into? You know, if I ever told my parents that shit, like they probably thank God my mom doesn't listen to. She doesn't even know how to turn the computer on, really, so she can't watch this shit. But like I don't know, it's just too much, man.
It's too.
It's even too much to go into. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know how it is nowadays because I'm a 44-year-old guy. I'm not getting letters like, hey, will you pose for me or this and that anymore, you know?
Maybe when you're 60 you will, because they're into weird shit, right? They're waiting until you get a little older.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't want it to end. So, anabolic use during the quote unquote golden era versus now. Because I know you kind of talked about it a little bit before we went on air.
I hate to say I don't know what these guys did. I mean, listen, we don't live with each other, so it's not like, oh, this guy takes this and that. I mean, definitely back in the days of Schwarzenegger and these guys, like they didn't have the anabolics that are available. I think, we went through a phase of like, there was only limited usage. And then we fell into the phase of like growth hormones, insulin, like in exotic stuff that came from Europe. Like that was like earlier, a little before my era and during my era. And then it fell into now everyone's making shit in their basement.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just crazy, tons more oil, and guys are taking 10 times the shit that they need to. And that's why the bodies just look so horrendous now, is because they're just loaded with oil and they can't get the condition, and the stuff is weaker. All the compounds are coming from
it's hard
China.
to find good shit.
Like, you know what? I wouldn't even know if someone said to me, hey, I want to buy this. I wouldn't even know, like, the local guy to get it from or anything. Like, back then you knew in the gym, like, this is a guy that has I mean, listen, I would just go straight to a doctor now at this point. That's the only thing I can really advise to people. Like, someone asked me yesterday, like, hey, I want to get this or that. And I'm like, listen, go to your doctor. If the doctor can't prescribe it, like, stay away from it. Because don't go to, like, the guy that can get it around, that from, like, the gym, because it's probably not going to be legit.
Right.
And that's the dangerous thing, and that's what the internet people buy stuff off, like, websites and stuff, which is just mind-blowing to me.
Who knows what their intent is? Maybe their intent, like, maybe they just want it to be super powerful and you'd have, like, these crazy results, so you come back and buy more, and maybe it's not even testosterone. Maybe it's something different. So you don't really know. You don't really know what you're getting. I remember years ago, one of the best powerlifting meets I ever had, I had these ampules of Sustanon, and it was the best shit that I ever had, but I could never fucking find it ever again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, nowadays, you're right, like things are just made by people who are mixing compounds.
Yeah, the blends seemed to be the best back then, like the ampules, and now it's like 10 cc bottles.
Those things were like gold. I remember I'd mess them up every once in a while because you like break them.
Yeah,
you're like, fuck, I screwed it all up.
Yeah, so it's like with that stuff, dude, it's so dangerous now. Mm-hmm. And I think that everyone's kind of thinks that there's a secret drug, and I mentioned those like all
peptides,
the peptides, which is like that stuff I'm not even aware of, because I know it for a fact. I've seen it, and it's like, not for human use. Mm-hmm. So what does that tell you?
It's the first thing people talk about when they have an injury. They're like, dump a bunch of that in there, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
think that's a great idea. Doesn't sound.
But
like
I
that.
went through the era of like growth hormone and the Lyozato thing, and he used like whatever it was from dead cadavers or something, like to real like synthetic growth hormone, and like we went through all that phase of like it's dangerous to take, and then you hear the athletes taking it and recovery processes, and then they weren't testing for it. Now they can test for it. So I think back in Arnold's era, yeah, no growth hormones and insulin, but nowadays it's like every guy and every gym is taking growth hormone and insulin, which is just crazy to me. Like you start messing with insulin, that kind of stuff, it's very, very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. But they read about it, and this guy did it or that guy did it. I mean, how many times I've heard, oh, well, this guy used to sell you stuff. Like I hear it all the time still. Like, oh, you get your stuff from this guy, and I'm like, listen, I haven't bought any juice from anyone,
Right.
Like it's crazy the stories.
Well, people are
hear.
they're probably trying to use your name, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of crazy to me, but it's definitely advanced, and I think people are more aware of it. But don't believe what you read on the internet. That's for sure.
Nice. So if a kid comes up, and a kid, I mean maybe someone in their 20s, they're getting pretty jacked, and they look at you and they're like, "Hey, I'm thinking about getting on." What's your advice for someone like that?
I always say, consult with a physician. Once you make that change, it's something that maybe you can't turn back on, because once your levels get something from outside like source, you're never going to be the same. I mean, you may have to be on therapy for the end of time, but it's all preference. I mean, whatever their personal goal is. But most people, it's like for the weekend warrior, the guy that's like, I want to get in shape for summer. I never suggest like, hey, get on a cycle and do this or that. But these guys aren't going to listen to me. They're going to look and say, oh, well, Jay, you got to where you were taking this or taking that. But it really doesn't have to do with them. Like I did what I did in order to pursue an ultimate goal. It wasn't about, trying to look good for the beach or whatever else. I had
Instagram.
Yeah. I mean, so you have to look at what your ultimate goal is, but be safe about it. And I always tell everyone, see a doctor, because nowadays, like the doctors prescribe it,
right?
Which wasn't the case 10, 15 years ago, right?
Right.
No doctor was going to give you a script for nothing back then. I mean, the studies have shown now to replace testosterone, it's pretty simple procedure now.
Movies like Bigger, Stronger, Faster.
There you go.
Made people more aware of what's going on.
Yeah. Do you think documentaries like Generation Iron are accurate as far as like dictating what the sport's like?
The first one was very fake. As far as like, they portrayed Phil Heath as like a really jerk off, know, and that's not Phil. I mean, I know Phil well. Kai Green, they portrayed him as a broke guy. He makes money. Dennis Wolf was an actor. I don't know what else.
So they were just trying to make it entertaining.
Because I mean, what are you going to show? Guys working out and eating chicken breasts all day? I mean, we talked about that. It's not exciting. So they had to show something was going on.
Yeah. Do you think Kai can ever catch up to Phil?
Not at this point.
Damn.
Phil's pretty much untouchable. He'll win 8 this year and go for 10 probably.
Did they test for anything in bodybuilding?
You know what? They drug tested Ronnie and I one year, specifically in June of 04 or 05. Whenever the baseball thing was apparent.
Right.
They tested the top.
They just wanted to test you and say, "Hey, these guys are on all this shit and they're fine."
No. I don't know what they tested us for. I remember they're probably testing for compounds, and I don't even know what the test results were. But it was an off-season thing. It wasn't during a contest. I mean,
they normally wouldn't really test for anything, right?
No, not now. I mean, they're not doing random testing. I mean, I always had physicals.
Any diuretics or anything?
No, they used to. I mean, if you remember, 01 I failed and I fought it and ended up beating it, but they stopped doing that. They just had to. Mohammed Benaziza died, and that's how they got that whole testing thing, because of diuretics. He was dehydrated. That's more dangerous than steroids.
Did Andreas Munzer, did he die the same way?
Yeah, I think he was overly dehydrated too. Yeah. But they found a bunch of steroids in his system too.
So fucking lean.
Yeah, I mean, he was shredded. I mean, he was like one of the most shredded guys ever.
Yeah, people were like, he died from being too ripped.
Yeah.
Which, who knows? You never know.
I mean, most of it's dehydration, kidney failure, that kind of stuff. I mean, if anyone goes in the hospital the night of a competition, they're going to be in renal failure for sure, because you can't get that dehydrated. It's going to put too much strain on the kidnees.
Where can people find you? Where can people find out more about Jay Cutler?
At Jay Cutler Instagram, Jay Cutler 4X Facebook, my website, jaycutler.com,
supplements and everything, right?
cutlernutrition.com, all the Instagram. I mean, Google search Jay Cutler. I'm the better looking one.
On your Instagram, you're also letting people know like where you're going to be. Like you do seminars and appearances.
I post up appearances, which I'm every week somewhere else. And
I find that to be false advertising. By the way, those pictures, you don't look nearly as big as you do. In person, you don't look nearly as big as
I
those
look
photos.
like shit, huh?
Yeah, it's really bad.
Well, I mean, I can't advertise myself like at ST Gym over here, right?
That's right. All right, that's all the time we got. Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. We're out.